Chapter 1. Louisiana. Olivia Farrell leaned back in her chair, her hands folded upon her lap. People passed and repassed her as they promenaded the long gallery, as it was called. They passed in couples, in trios. They talked with unnecessary loudness. They laughed at their own and each other's jokes. They flirted, they sentimentalized, they criticized each other, but none of them showed any special interest in Olivia Farrell, nor did Miss Farrell, on her part, show much interest in them. She had been at Oakville Springs for 2 weeks. She was alone, out of her element, and knew nobody. The fact that she was a New Yorker, and had never before been so far south, was rather against her. On her arrival she had been glanced over and commented upon with candor. "She is a Yankee," said the pretty and remarkably youthful-looking mother of an apparently grown-up family from New Orleans. "You can see it." And though the remark was not meant to be exactly severe, Olivia felt that it was very severe, indeed, under existing circumstances. She heard it as she was giving her orders for breakfast to her own particular jet-black and highly excitable waiter, and she felt guilty at once and blushed, hastily taking a sip of ice water to conceal her confusion. When she went upstairs afterward, she wrote a very interesting letter to her brother in New York, and tried to make an analysis of her sentiments for his edification. "You advised me to come here because it would be novel as well as beneficial," she wrote. "And it certainly is novel. I think I feel like a pariah, a little. I am aware that even the best bred and most intelligent of them, hearing that I have always lived in New York, will privately regret it if they like me and remember it if they dislike me. Good-natured and warm-hearted as they seem among themselves, I am sure it will be I who will have to make the advances, if advances are made, and I must be very amiable, indeed, if I intend that they shall like me." But she had not been well enough at first to be in the humor to make the advances, and consequently had not found her position an exciting one. She had looked on until she had been able to rouse herself to some pretty active likes and dislikes, but she knew no one. She felt this afternoon as if this mild recreation of looking on had begun rather to pall upon her, and she drew out her watch, glancing at it with a little yawn. "It is 5 o'clock," she said. "Very soon the band will make its appearance, and it will bray until the stages come in. Yes, there it is." The musical combination to which she referred was composed of 6 or 7 gentlemen of color who played upon brazen instruments, each in different keys and different time. 3 times a day they collected on a rustic kiosk upon the lawn and played divers popular airs, with an intensity, fervor, and muscular power worthy of a better cause. They straggled up as she spoke, took their places and began, and before they had played many minutes the most exciting event of the day occurred, as it always did somewhere about this hour. In the midst of the gem of their collection was heard the rattle of wheels and the crack of whips, and through the rapturous shouts of the juvenile guests, the 2 venerable, rickety stages dashed up with a lumbering flourish, and a spasmodic pretense of excitement, calculated to deceive only the feeblest mind. At the end of the gallery, they checked themselves in their mad career, the drivers making strenuous efforts to restrain the impetuosity of the 4 steeds, whose harness rattled against their ribs with an unpleasant bony sound. Half a dozen waiters rushed forward, the doors were flung open, the steps let down with a bang, the band brayed insanely, and the passengers alighted. 1, 2, 3, 4, counted Olivia Farrell mechanically as the first vehicle unburdened itself, and then, as the door of the second was opened, "One, only one, and a very young one too. Dear me, poor girl." This exclamation might naturally have fallen from any quick-sighted and sympathetic person. The solitary passenger of the second stage stood among the crowd, hesitating, and plainly overwhelmed with timorousness. 3 waiters were wrestling with an ugly shawl, a dreadful shining valise, and a painted wooden trunk, such as is seen in country stores. In their enthusiastic desire to dispose creditably of these articles, they temporarily forgot the owner, who, after one desperate, timid glance at them, looked round her in vain for succor. She was very pretty and very young and very ill-dressed, her costume a bucolic travesty on prevailing modes. She did not know where to go, and no one thought of showing her. The loungers about the office stared at her. She began to turn pale with embarrassment and timidity. Olivia Farrell left her chair and crossed the gallery. She spoke to a servant a little sharply. "Why not show the young lady into the parlor?" she said. The girl heard, and looked at her helplessly, but with gratitude. The waiter darted forward with hospitable rapture. "Dis yas de way, miss," he said, "right inter deception room. Foller me, ma'am." Olivia returned to her seat. People were regarding her with curiosity, but she was entirely oblivious of the fact. That is one of them, she was saying mentally. That is one of them, and a very interesting type it is, too. To render the peculiarities of this young woman clearer, it may be well to reveal here something of her past life and surroundings. Her father had been a literary man, her mother an illustrator of books and magazine articles. From her earliest childhood, she had been surrounded by men and women of artistic or literary occupations, some who were drudges, some who were geniuses, some who balanced between the two extremes, and she had unconsciously learned the tricks of the trade. She had been used to people who continually had their eyes open to anything peculiar and interesting in human nature, who were enraptured by the discovery of new types of men, women, and emotions. Since she had been left an orphan, she had lived with her brother, who had been reporter, editor, contributor, critic, one after the other, until at last he had established a very enviable reputation as a brilliant, practical young fellow who knew his business and had a fine career open to him. So it was natural that, having become interested in the general friendly fashion of dissecting and studying every scrap of human nature within reach, she had followed more illustrious examples and had become very critical upon the subject of types herself. During her sojourn at Oakville, she had studied the North Carolinian mountaineer type with the enthusiasm of an amateur. She had talked to the women in sunbonnets who brought fruit to the hotel and sat on the steps and floor of the galleries, awaiting the advent of customers with a composure only to be equaled by the calmness of the noble savage. She had walked and driven over the mountain roads, stopping at wayside houses and entering into conversation with the owners, until she had become comparatively well known, even in the space of a fortnight, and she had taken notes for her brother until she had roused him to sharing her own interest in her discoveries. "I am sure you will find a great deal of material here," she wrote to him. "You see how I have fallen a victim to that dreadful habit of looking at everything in the light of material. A man is no longer a man, he is material. Sorrow is not sorrow, joy is not joy, it is material. There is something rather ghoulish in it. I wonder if anatomists look at people's bodies as we do at their minds, and if to them everyone is a subject. At present I am interested in a species of girl I have discovered. Sometimes she belongs to the better class, the farmers, who have a great deal of land and who are the rich men of the community. Sometimes she lives in a log cabin with a mother who smokes and chews tobacco, but in either case she is a surprise and a mystery. She is always pretty, she is occasionally beautiful, and in spite of her house, her people, her education or want of it, she is instinctively a refined and delicately susceptible young person. She has always been to some common school, where she has written compositions on sentimental or touching subjects, and when she belongs to the better class, she takes a fashion magazine and tries to make her dresses like those of the ladies in the colored plates, and I may add frequently fails. I could write a volume about her, but I want, when your vacation arrives, come and see for yourself. It was of this class Miss Farrell was thinking when she said, "That is one of them, and a very interesting type it is, too." When she went into the dining room to partake of the 6 o'clock supper, she glanced about her in search of the new arrival, but she had not yet appeared. A few minutes later, however, she entered. She came in slowly, looking straight before her, and trying very hard to appear at ease. She was prettier than before and worse dressed. She wore a blue, much-ruffled muslin and a wide collar made of imitation lace. She had tucked her sleeves up to her elbow with a band and bow of black velvet, and her round, smooth young arms were adorable. She looked for a vacant place, and seeing none, stopped short, as if she did not know what to do. Then some magnetic attraction drew her eye to Olivia Farrell's. After a moment's pause, she moved timidly toward her. I wish a waiter would come," she faltered. At that moment, one on the wing stopped in obedience to a gesture of Miss Farrell's, a delicate, authoritative movement of the head. "Give this young lady that chair opposite me," she said. The chair was drawn out with a flourish, the girl was seated, and the bill of fare was placed in her hands. "Thank you," she said, in a low, astonished voice. Olivia smiled. "That waiter is my own special and peculiar property," she said, "and I rather pride myself on him." But her guest scarcely seemed to comprehend her pleasantry. She looked somewhat awkward. "I don't know much about waiters," she ventured. "I'm not used to them, and I suppose they know it. I never was at a hotel before." "You will soon get used to them," returned Miss Farrell. The girl fixed her eyes upon her with a questioning appeal. They were the loveliest eyes she had ever seen, Miss Farrell thought, large-irised, and with wonderful long lashes fringing them and curling upward, giving them a tender, very wide-open look. She seemed suddenly to gain courage, and also to feel it her duty to account for herself. "I shouldn't have come here alone if I could have got father to come with me," she revealed. "But he wouldn't come. He said it wasn't the place for him. I haven't been very well since mother died, and he thought I'd better try the Springs a while. I don't think I shall like it." "I don't like it," replied Miss Farrell candidly, "but I dare say you will when you know people." The girl glanced rapidly and furtively over the crowded room, and then her eyes fell. "I shall never know them," she said, in a depressed undertone. In secret, Miss Farrell felt a conviction that she was right. She had not been presented under the right auspices. "It is rather clever and sensitive in her to find it out so quickly," she thought. "Some girls would be more sanguine and be led into blunders." They progressed pretty well during the meal. When it was over, and Miss Farrell rose, she became conscious that her companion was troubled by some new difficulty, and a second thought suggested to her what its nature was. "Are you going to your room?" she asked. "I don't know," said the girl with the look of helpless appeal again. "I don't know where else to go. I don't like to go out there," signifying the gallery, alone. "Why not come with me?" said Miss Farrell. "Then we can promenade together." "Ah," she said with a little gasp of relief and gratitude. "Don't you mind?" "On the contrary, I shall be very glad of your society," Miss Farrell answered. "I am alone too." So they went out together and wandered slowly from one end of the starlit gallery to the other, winding their way through the crowd that promenaded, and, upon the whole, finding it rather pleasant. "I shall have to take care of her," Miss Farrell was deciding, "but I do not think I shall mind the trouble." The thing that touched her most was the girl's innocent trust in her sincerity, her taking for granted that this stranger, who had been polite to her, had been so not for worldly good breeding's sake, but from true friendliness and extreme generosity of nature. Her first shyness conquered, she related her whole history with the unreserve of a child. Her father was a farmer, and she had always lived with him on his farm. He had been too fond of her to allow her to leave home, and she had never been away to school. "He has made a pet of me at home," she said. "I was the only one that lived to be over 8 years old. I am the 11th. 10 died before I was born, and it made father and mother worry a good deal over me, and father was worse than mother. He said the time never seemed to come when he could spare me. He is very good and kind, is father," she added, in a hurried, soft-voiced way. "He's rough, but he's very good and kind." Before they parted for the night, Miss Farrell had the whole genealogical tree by heart. They were an amazingly prolific family, it seemed. There was Uncle Josiah, who had 10 children, Uncle Leander, who had 15, Aunt Amanda, who had 12, and Aunt Nervy, whose belongings comprised 3 sets of twins and an unlimited supply of odd numbers. They went upstairs together and parted at Miss Farrell's door, their rooms being near each other. The girl held out her hand. "Good night," she said. "I'm so thankful I've got to know you." Her eyes looked bigger and wider open than ever. She smiled, showing her even, sound, little white teeth. Under the bright light of the lamp, the freckles the day betrayed on her smooth skin were not to be seen. "Dear me," thought Miss Farrell. "How startlingly pretty, in spite of the cotton lace and the dreadful polonaise." She touched her lightly on the shoulder. "Why, you are as tall as I am," she said. "Yes," the girl replied depressedly, "but I'm twice as broad." "Oh no, no such thing." And then, with a delicate glance down over her, she said, "It is your dress that makes you fancy so. Perhaps your dressmaker does not understand your figure," as if such a failing was the most natural and simple thing in the world, and needed only the slightest rectifying. "I have no dressmaker," the girl answered. "I make my things myself, perhaps that is it." "It is a little dangerous, it is true," replied Miss Farrell. "I have been bold enough to try it myself, and I never succeeded. I could give you the address of a very thorough woman if you lived in New York. But I don't live there, you see. I wish I did. I never shall, though. Father could never spare me." Another slight pause ensued, during which she looked admiringly at Miss Farrell. Then she said good night again and turned away. But before she had crossed the corridor, she stopped. "I never told you my name," she said. Miss Farrell naturally expected she would announce it at once, but she did not. An air of embarrassment fell upon her. She seemed almost averse to speaking. "Well," said Miss Farrell, smiling, "what is it?" She did not raise her eyes from the carpet, as she replied, unsteadily, "It's Louisiana." Miss Farrell answered her very composedly. "The name of the state." Yes, father came from there. But you did not tell me your surname. Oh, that is Rogers. You didn't laugh, I thought you would. At the first name, replied Miss Farrell. Oh no, it is unusual, but names often are, and Louise is pretty. So it is, she said, brightening. I never thought of that, I hate Louisa. They will call it Louisa or Louisiana. I could sign myself Louise, couldn't I? Yes, Miss Farrell replied. And then her protégé said, good night, for the third time, and disappeared. Chapter 2. Worths. She presented herself at the bedroom door with a timid knock the next morning before breakfast, evidently expecting to be taken charge of. Miss Farrell felt sure she would appear, and had, indeed, dressed herself in momentary expectation of hearing the knock. When she heard it, she opened the door at once. I am glad to see you, she said. I thought you might come. A slight expression of surprise showed itself in the girl's eyes. It had never occurred to her that she might not come. Oh yes, she replied. I never could go down alone when there was anyone who would go with me. There was something on her mind, Miss Farrell fancied, and presently it burst forth in a confidential inquiry. Is this dress very short-waisted? She asked with great earnestness. Merciful delicacy stood in the way of Miss Farrell's telling her how short-waisted it was, and how it maltreated her beautiful young body. It is rather short-waisted, it is true. Perhaps, the girl went on, with a touch of guileless melancholy, I am naturally this shape. Here, it must be confessed, Miss Farrell forgot herself for the moment, and expressed her indignation with undue fervor. Perish the thought, she exclaimed. Why, child, your figure is 100 times better than mine. Louisiana wore for a moment a look of absolute fright. Oh no, she cried. Oh no, your figure is magnificent. Magnificent, echoed Miss Farrell, giving way to her enthusiasm and indulging in figures of speech. Don't you see that I am thin, absolutely thin, but my things fit me and my dressmaker understands me. If you were dressed as I am, pausing to look her over from head to foot. Ah, she exclaimed pathetically, how I should like to see you in some of my clothes. A tender chord was touched. A gentle sadness, aroused by this instance of wasted opportunities, rested upon her. But instantaneously she brightened, seemingly without any particular cause. A brilliant idea had occurred to her, but she did not reveal it. I will wait, she thought, until she is more at her ease with me. She really was more at her ease already. Just this one little scrap of conversation had done that. She became almost affectionate in a shy way before they reached the dining room. I want to ask you something, she said, as they neared the door. What is it? She held Miss Farrell back with a light clasp on her arm. Her air was quite tragic in a small way. Please say Louise when you speak to me, she said. Never say Miss Louisiana, never, never. No, I shall never say Miss Louisiana, her companion answered. How would you like Miss Rogers? I would rather have Louise, she said disappointedly. Well, returned Miss Farrell, Louise let it be. And Louise it was thenceforward. If she had not been so pretty, so innocent, and so affectionate and humble a young creature, she might have been troublesome at times, it occurred to Olivia Farrell. She clung so pertinaciously to their chance acquaintanceship. She was so helpless and desolate if left to herself, and so inordinately glad to be taken in hand again. She made no new friends, which was perhaps natural enough after all. She had nothing in common with the young women who played tenpins and croquet and rode out in parties with their cavaliers. She was not of them, and understood them as little as they understood her. She knew very well that they regarded her with scornful tolerance when they were of the ill-natured class, and with ill-subdued wonder when they were amiable. She could not play tenpins or croquet, nor could she dance. What are the men kneeling down for, and why do they keep stopping to put on those queer little caps and things? She whispered to Miss Farrell one night. They are trying to dance a German, replied Miss Farrell, and the man who is leading them only knows one figure. As for the riding, she had been used to riding all her life. But no one asked her to join them, and if they had done so she would have been too wise, unsophisticated as she was, to accept the invitation. So where Miss Farrell was seen she was seen also, and she was never so happy as when she was invited into her protector's room, and allowed to spend the morning or evening there. She would have been content to sit there forever, and listen to Miss Farrell's graphic description of life in the great world. The names of celebrated personages made small impression upon her. It was revealed gradually to Miss Farrell that she had private doubts as to the actual existence of some of them, and the rest she had never heard of before. "You never read The Scarlet Letter?" asked her instructress upon one occasion. She flushed guiltily. "No," she answered, nor any of the others." Miss Farrell gazed at her silently for a few moments. Then she asked her a question in a low voice, specially mellowed, so that it might not alarm her. "Do you know who John Stuart Mill is?" she said. "No," she replied from the dust of humiliation. "Have you never heard, just heard of Ruskin?" "No." "Nor of Michelangelo?" "No, yes, I think so perhaps, but I don't know what he did." "Do you," she continued, very slowly, "do you know anything about Worth?" "No, nothing." Her questioner clasped her hands with repressed emotion. "Oh," she cried, how you have been neglected." She was really depressed, but her protégé was so much more deeply, so that she felt it her duty to contain herself and return to cheerfulness. "Never mind," she said. "I will tell you all I know about them," and after a pause for speculative thought upon the subject, "By the by, it isn't much, and I will lend you some books to read, and give you a list of some you must persuade your father to buy for you, and you will be all right. It is rather dreadful not to know the names of people and things. But after all, I think there are very few people who She was checked here by rigid conscientious scruples. If she was to train this young mind in the path of learning and literature, she must place before her a higher standard of merit than the somewhat shady and slipshod one her eagerness had almost betrayed her into upholding. She had heard people talk of standards and ideals, and when she was kept to the point, and in regulation working order, she could be very eloquent upon these subjects herself. "You will have to work very seriously," she remarked, rather incongruously and with a rapid change of position. "If you wish to acquire anything, you must read conscientiously and with a purpose." She was rather proud of that last clause. "Must I?" inquired Louise humbly. "I should like to if I knew where to begin. Who was Worth? Was he a poet?" Miss Farrell acquired a fine, high color very suddenly. "Oh," she answered, with some uneasiness, you have no need to begin with Worth. He doesn't matter so much, really." "I thought," Miss Rogers said meekly, "that you were more troubled about my not having read what he wrote, than about my not knowing any of the others." "Oh no, you see the fact is, he never wrote anything." "What did he do?" she asked, anxious for information. It isn't did, it is does. He makes dresses." "Dresses." This single word, but no exclamation point could express its tone of wild amazement. "Yes." "A man." "Yes." There was a dead silence. It was embarrassing at first. Then the amazement of the unsophisticated one began to calm itself. It gradually died down, and became another emotion, merging itself into interest. "Does," guilelessly she inquired, "he make nice ones?" "Nice," echoed Miss Farrell. "They are works of art. I have got 3 in my trunk." "Oh," sighed Louisiana. "Oh dear." Miss Farrell rose from her chair. "I will show them to you," she said. I should like you to try them on." "To try them on," ejaculated the child in an awe-stricken tone. "Me?" "Yes," said Miss Farrell, unlocking the trunk and throwing back the lid. "I have been wanting to see you in them since the first day you came." She took them out and laid them upon the bed on their trays. Louise got up from the floor and approaching, reverently stood near them. There was a cream-colored evening dress of soft, thick, close-clinging silk of some antique modern sort. It had golden fringe, and golden flowers embroidered upon it. "Look at that," said Miss Farrell, softly, even religiously. She made a mysterious, majestic gesture. "Come here," she said, "you must put it on." Louise shrank back a pace. I daren't," she cried. "It is too beautiful." "Come here," repeated Miss Farrell. She obeyed timorously, and gave herself into the hands of her controller. She was so timid and excited that she trembled all the time her toilette was being performed for her. Miss Farrell went through this service with the manner of a priestess officiating at an altar. She laced up the back of the dress with the slender, golden cords. She arranged the antique drapery which wound itself around in close swathing folds. There was not the shadow of a wrinkle from shoulder to hem. The lovely young figure was revealed in all its beauty of outline. There were no sleeves at all. There was not very much bodice, but there was a great deal of effect, and this, it is to be supposed, was the object. "Walk across the floor," commanded Miss Farrell. Louisiana obeyed her. "Do it again," said Miss Farrell. Having been obeyed for the second time, her hands fell together. Her attitude and expression could be said to be significant only of rapture. "I said so," she cried. "I said so, you might have been born in New York." It was a grand climax. Louisiana felt it to the depths of her reverent young heart, but she could not believe it. She was sure that it was too sublime to be true. She shook her head in deprecation. "It is no exaggeration," said Miss Farrell with renewed fervor. "Lawrence himself, if he were not told that you had lived here, would never guess it. I should like to try you on him." "Who is he?" inquired Louisiana. "Is he a writer too?" "Well, yes, but not exactly like the others. He is my brother." It was 2 hours before this episode ended. Only at the sounding of the second bell did Louisiana escape to her room to prepare for dinner. Miss Farrell began to replace the dresses in her trunk. She performed her task in an abstracted mood. When she had completed it, she stood upright and paused a moment, with quite a startled air. "Dear me," she exclaimed, "I actually forgot about Ruskin." Chapter 3. He is different. The same evening, as they sat on one of the seats upon the lawn, Miss Farrell became aware several times that Louisiana was regarding her with more than ordinary interest. She sat with her hands folded upon her lap, her eyes fixed on her face, and her pretty mouth actually a little open. "What are you thinking of?" Olivia asked at length. The girl started, and recovered herself with an effort. I was thinking about authors," she stammered. "Any particular author?" inquired Olivia, "or authors as a class?" "About your brother being one. I never thought I should see anyone who knew an author, and you are related to one." Her companion's smile was significant of immense experience. It was plain that she was so accustomed to living on terms of intimacy with any number of authors that she could afford to feel indifferent about them. "My dear," she said amiably, "they are not in the least different from other people." It sounded something like blasphemy. "Not different," cried Louisiana. "Oh, surely they must be. Isn't your brother different?" Miss Farrell stopped to think. She was very fond of her brother. Privately, she considered him the literary man of his day. She was simply disgusted when she heard experienced critics only calling him clever and brilliant instead of great and world-moving. "Yes," she replied at length, "he is different." "I thought he must be," said Louisiana with a sigh of relief. "You are, you know." "Am I?" returned Olivia. "Thank you, but I am not an author at least," she added guiltily. "Nothing I have written has ever been published." "Oh, why not?" exclaimed Louisiana. "Why not?" she repeated dubiously and thoughtfully. And then, knitting her brows, she said, "I don't know why not." "I am sure if you have ever written anything, it ought to have been published," protested her adorer. "I thought so," said Miss Farrell, but they didn't." "They?" echoed Louisiana. "Who are they?" "The editors," she replied in a rather gloomy manner. "There is a great deal of wire-pulling, and favoritism, and even envy and malice of which those outside know nothing. You wouldn't understand it if I should tell you about it." For a few moments she wore quite a fell expression, and gloom reigned. She gave her head a little shake. "They regret it afterward," she remarked, "frequently." From which Louisiana gathered that it was the editors who were so overwhelmed, and she could not help sympathizing with them in secret. There was something in the picture of their unavailing remorse which touched her, despite her knowledge of the patent fact that they deserved it and could expect nothing better. She was quite glad when Olivia brightened up, as she did presently. "Lawrence is handsomer than most of them, and has a more distinguished air," she said. "He is very charming, people always say so." "I wish I could see him," ventured Louisiana. "You will see him if you stay here much longer," replied Miss Farrell. "It is quite likely he will come to Oakville." For a moment Louisiana fluttered and turned pale with pleasure, but as suddenly she drooped. "I forgot," she faltered. "You will have to be with him always, and I shall have no one. He won't want me." Olivia sat and looked at her with deepening interest. She was thinking again of a certain whimsical idea which had beset her several times since she had attired her protégé in the cream-colored robe. "Louise," she said, in a low, mysterious tone, "how would you like to wear dresses like mine all the rest of the time you are here?" The child stared at her blankly. "I haven't got any," she gasped. "No," said Miss Farrell with deliberation, "but I have." She rose from her seat, dropping her mysterious air and smiling encouragingly. "Come with me to my room," she said. "I want to talk to you." If she had ordered her to follow her to the stake, it is not at all unlikely that Louisiana would have obeyed. She got up meekly, smiling, too, and feeling sure something very interesting was going to happen. She did not understand in the least, but she was quite tractable. And after they had reached the room and shut themselves in, she found that it was something very interesting which was to happen. "You remember what I said to you this morning?" Miss Farrell suggested. "You said so many things." "Oh, but you cannot have forgotten this particular thing. I said you looked as if you had been born in New York." Louisiana remembered with a glow of rapture. "Oh yes," she answered. "And I said Lawrence himself would not know, if he was not told, that you had lived all your life here." "Yes." "And I said I should like to try you on him." "Yes." Miss Farrell kept her eyes fixed on her and watched her closely. "I have been thinking of it all the morning," she added. "I should like to try you on him." Louisiana was silent a moment. Then she spoke, hesitatingly. "Do you mean that I should pretend?" she began. "Oh no," interrupted Miss Farrell. "Not pretend either one thing or the other. Only let me dress you as I choose, and then take care that you say nothing whatever about your past life. You will have to be rather quiet, perhaps, and let him talk. He will like that, of course. Men always do, and then you will learn a great many things from him." "It will be a very strange thing to do," said Louisiana. "It will be a very interesting thing," answered Olivia, her enthusiasm increasing. "How he will admire you." Louisiana indulged in one of her blushes. "Have you a picture of him?" "Yes, why?" she asked in some surprise. "Because I should like to see his face." "Do you think," Miss Farrell said in further bewilderment, "that you might not like him?" "I think he might not like me." "Not like you," cried Miss Farrell. He will think you are divine when you are dressed as I shall dress you." She went to her trunk and produced the picture. It was not a photograph, but a little crayon head, the head of a handsome man, whose expression was a singular combination of dreaminess and alertness. It was a fascinating face. "One of his friends did it," said Miss Farrell. "His friends are very fond of him and admire his good looks very much. They protest against his being photographed. They like to sketch him. They are always making studies of his head. What do you think of him?" Louisiana hesitated. "He is different," she said at last. "I thought he would be." She gave the picture back to Miss Farrell, who replaced it in her trunk. She sat for a few seconds looking down at the carpet and apparently seeing very little. Then she looked up at her companion, who was suddenly a little embarrassed at finding her receive her whimsical planning so seriously. She herself had not thought of it as being serious at all. It would be interesting and amusing, and would prove her theory. "I will do what you want me to do," said Louisiana. "Then," said Miss Farrell, wondering at an unexpected sense of discomfort in herself, "I will dress you for supper now. You must begin to wear the things, so that you may get used to them." Chapter 4. A New Type. When the two entered the supper room together, a little commotion was caused by their arrival. At first, the supple young figure in violet and gray was not recognized. It was not the figure people had been used to. It seemed so tall and slenderly round. The reddish-brown hair was combed high and made into soft puffs. It made the pretty head seem more delicately shaped, and showed how white and graceful the back of the slender neck was. It was several minutes before the problem was solved. Then a sharp young woman exclaimed, sotto voce, "It's the little country girl, in new clothes, in clothes that fit. Would you believe it?" "Don't look at your plate so steadily," whispered Miss Farrell. "Lean back and fan yourself as if you did not hear. You must never show that you hear things." "I shall be obliged to give her a few hints now and then," she had said to herself beforehand. "But I feel sure when she once catches the cue she will take it." It really seemed as if she did, too. She had looked at herself long and steadily after she had been dressed, and when she turned away from the glass, she held her head a trifle more erect, and her cheeks had reddened. Perhaps what she had recognized in the reflection she had seen had taught her a lesson, but she said nothing. In a few days, Olivia herself was surprised at the progress she had made. Sanguine as she was, she had not been quite prepared for the change which had taken place in her. She had felt sure it would be necessary to teach her to control her emotions, but suddenly she seemed to have learned to control them without being told to do so. She was no longer demonstrative of her affection. She no longer asked innocent questions, nor did she ever speak of her family. Her reserve was puzzling to Olivia. "You are very clever," she said to her one day, the words breaking from her in spite of herself, after she had sat regarding her in silence for a few minutes. "You are even cleverer than I thought you were, Louise." Was that very clever? The girl asked. Yes, it was, Olivia answered, but not so clever as you are proving yourself. But Louisiana did not smile or blush, as she had expected she would. She sat very quietly, showing neither pleasure nor shyness, and seeming for a moment or so to be absorbed in thought. In the evening when the stages came in, they were sitting on the front gallery together. As the old rattle-traps bumped and swung themselves up the gravel drive, Olivia bent forward to obtain a better view of the passengers. He ought to be among them, she said. Louisiana laid her hand on her arm. Who is that sitting with the driver? She asked as the second vehicle passed them. Isn't that? To be sure it is, exclaimed Miss Farrell. She would have left her seat, but she found herself detained. Her companion had grasped her wrist. Wait a minute, she said, don't leave me. Oh, I wish I had not done it. Miss Farrell turned and stared at her in amazement. She spoke in her old, uncontrolled, childish fashion. She was pale and her eyes were dilated. What is the matter? Said Miss Farrell hurriedly when she found her voice. Is it that you really don't like the idea? If you don't, there is no need of our carrying it out. It was only nonsense. I beg your pardon for not seeing that it disturbed you. Perhaps, after all, it was very bad taste in me. But she was not allowed to finish her sentence. As suddenly as it had altered before, Louisiana's expression altered again. She rose to her feet with a strange little smile. She looked into Miss Farrell's astonished face steadily and calmly. Your brother has seen you and is coming toward us, she said. I will leave you. We shall see each other again at supper. And with a little bow, she moved away with an air of composure which left her instructress stunned. She could scarcely recover her equilibrium sufficiently to greet her brother decently when he reached her side. She had never been so thoroughly at sea in her life. After she had gone to her room that night, her brother came and knocked at the door. When she opened it and let him in, he walked to a chair and threw himself into it, wearing a rather excited look. Olivia, he began at once, what a bewildering girl. Olivia sat down opposite to him, with a composed smile. Miss Rogers, of course, she said. Of course, he echoed. And then, after a pause of 2 or 3 seconds, he added, in the tone he had used before, what a delightfully mysterious girl. Mysterious, repeated Olivia. There is no other word for it. She has such an adorable face, she looks so young, and she says so little. And then, with serious delight, he added, it is a new type. Olivia began to laugh. Why are you laughing? He demanded. Because I was so sure you would say that, she answered. I was waiting for it. But it is true, he replied, quite vehemently. I never saw anything like her before. I look at her great soft eyes, and I catch glimpses of expression which don't seem to belong to the rest of her. When I see her eyes, I could fancy for a moment that she had been brought up in a convent, or had lived a very simple, isolated life, but when she speaks and moves I am bewildered. I want to hear her talk, but she says so little. She does not even dance. I suppose her relatives are serious people. I dare say you have not heard much of them from her. Her reserve is so extraordinary in a girl. I wonder how old she is. 19, I think. I thought so. I never saw anything prettier than her quiet way when I asked her to dance with me. She said simply, I do not dance. I have never learned. It was as if she had never thought of it as being an unusual thing. He talked of her all the time he remained in the room. Olivia had never seen him so interested before. The fascination is that she seems to be two creatures at once, he said. And one of them is stronger than the other and will break out and reveal itself one day. I begin by feeling I do not understand her, and that is the most interesting of all beginnings. I long to discover which of the two creatures is the real one. When he was going away, he stopped suddenly to say, How was it you never mentioned her in your letters? I can't understand that. I wanted you to see her for yourself, Olivia answered. I thought I would wait. Well, he said, after thinking a moment, I am glad after all that you did. Chapter 5. I have hurt you. From the day of his arrival, a new life began for Louisiana. She was no longer an obscure and unconsidered young person. Suddenly, and for the first time in her life, she found herself vested with a marvelous power. It was a power girls of a different class from her own are vested with from the beginning of their lives. They are used to it and regard it as their birthright. Louisiana was not used to it. There had been nothing like it attending her position as that purty gal Rogers's. She was accustomed to the admiration of men. She was indifferent to men who wore short-waisted blue jean coats, and turned upon their elbows to stare at her as she sat in the little white-framed church. After making an effort to cultivate her acquaintance, they generally went away disconcerted. "She's mighty still," they said. "She hain't got nothin' to say. Seems like thar ain't much to her, but she's powerful purty though." This was nothing like her present experience. She began slowly to realize that she was a little like a young queen now. Here was a man such as she had never spoken to before, who was always ready to endeavor to his utmost to please her. Who, without any tendency towards sentimental nonsense, was plainly the happier for her presence and favor. What could be more assiduous and gallant than the everyday behavior of the well-bred, thoroughly experienced young man of the period toward the young beauty who for the moment reigns over his fancy? It need only be over his fancy. There is no necessity that the impression should be any deeper. His suavity, his chivalric air, his ready wit in her service, are all that could be desired. When Louisiana awakened to the fact that all this homage was rendered to her as being only the natural result of her girlish beauty, as if it was the simplest thing in the world, and a state of affairs which must have existed from the first, she experienced a sense of terror. Just at the very first, she would have been glad to escape from it and sink into her old obscurity. "It does not belong to me," she said to herself. "It belongs to someone else, to the girl he thinks I am. I am not that girl, though, I will remember that." But in a few days she calmed down. She told herself that she always did remember, but she ceased to feel frightened and was more at ease. She never talked very much, but she became more familiar with the subjects she heard discussed. One morning she went to Olivia's room and asked her for the address of a bookseller. "I want to send for some books and magazines," she said confusedly. "I wish you, if you would tell me what to send for. Father will give me the money if I ask him for it." Olivia sat down and made a list. It was a long list, comprising the best periodicals of the day and several standard books. When she handed it to her, she regarded her with curiosity. "You mean to read them all?" she asked. "Isn't it time that I should?" replied her pupil. "Well, it is a good plan," returned Olivia, rather absently. Truth to tell, she was more puzzled every day. She had begun to be quite sure that something had happened. It seemed as if a slight coldness existed between herself and her whilom adorer. The simplicity of her enthusiasm was gone. Her affection had changed as her outward bearing. It was a better regulated and less noticeable emotion. Once or twice, Olivia fancied she had seen the girl looking at her even sadly, as if she felt, for the moment, a sense of some loss. "Perhaps it was very clumsy in me," she used to say to herself. "Perhaps I don't understand her after all." But she could not help looking on with interest. She had never before seen Lawrence enjoy himself so thoroughly. He had been working very hard during the past year and was ready for his holiday. He found the utter idleness, which was the chief feature of the place, a good thing. There was no town or village within 20 miles. Newspapers were a day or two old when they arrived. There were very few books to be found, and there was absolutely no excitement. At night the band brayed in the empty-looking ballroom, and a few very young couples danced, in a desultory fashion, and without any ceremony. The primitive, domesticated slowness of the place was charming. Most of the guests had come from the far south at the beginning of the season and would remain until the close of it, so they had had time to become familiar with each other and to throw aside restraint. "There is nothing to distract one," Farrell said. "Nothing to rouse one, nothing to inspire one, nothing. It is delicious. Why didn't I know of it before?" He had plenty of time to study his sister's friend. She rode and walked with him and Olivia when they made their excursions. She listened while he read aloud to them, as he lay on the grass in a quiet corner of the grounds. He thought her natural reserve held her from expressing her opinion on what he read very freely. It certainly did not occur to him that she was beginning her literary education under his guidance. He could see that the things which pleased him most were not lost upon her. Her face told him that. One moonlight night, as they sat on an upper gallery, he began to speak of the novelty of the aspect of the country as it presented itself to an outsider who saw it for the first time. "It is a new life and a new people," he said. "And, by the way, Olivia, where is the new species of young woman I was to see, the daughter of the people who does not belong to her sphere?" He turned to Louisiana. "Have you ever seen her?" he asked. "I must confess to a dubiousness on the subject." Before he could add another word, Louisiana turned upon him. He could see her face clearly in the moonlight. It was white, and her eyes were dilated and full of fire. "Why do you speak in that way?" she cried. As if such people were so far beneath you, what right have you? She stopped suddenly. Lawrence Farrell was gazing at her in amazement. She rose from her seat, trembling. I will go away a little, she said. I beg your pardon and Miss Farrell's. She turned her back upon them and went away. Farrell sat holding her little round, white feather fan helplessly, and staring after her until she disappeared. It was several seconds before the silence was broken. It was he who broke it. I don't know what it means, he said in a low voice. I don't know what I have done. In a little while he got up and began to roam aimlessly about the gallery. He strolled from one end to the other with his hands thrust in his coat pockets. Olivia, who had remained seated, knew that he was waiting in hopes that Louisiana would return. He had been walking to and fro, looking as miserable as possible, for about half an hour, when at last she saw him pause and turn half round before the open door of an upper corridor leading out upon the veranda. A black figure stood revealed against the inside light. It was Louisiana, and after hesitating a moment, she moved slowly forward. She had not recovered her color, but her manner was perfectly quiet. I am glad you did not go away, she said. Farrell had only stood still at first, waiting her pleasure, but the instant she spoke, he made a quick step toward her. I should have felt it a very hard thing not to have seen you again before I slept, he said. She made no reply, and they walked together in silence until they reached the opposite end of the gallery. Miss Farrell has gone in, she said then. He turned to look and saw that such was the case. Suddenly, for some reason best known to herself, Olivia had disappeared from the scene. Louisiana leaned against one of the slender, supporting pillars of the gallery. She did not look at Farrell, but at the blackness of the mountains rising before them. Farrell could not look away from her. If you had not come out again, he said after a pause, I think I should have remained here, baying at the moon, all night. Then, as she made no reply, he began to pour himself forth quite recklessly. I cannot quite understand how I hurt you, he said. It seemed to me that I must have hurt you, but even while I don't understand, there are no words abject enough to express what I feel now and have felt during the last half hour. If I only dared ask you to tell me. She stopped him. I can't tell you, she said. But it is not your fault. It is nothing you could have understood. It is my fault, all my fault, and I deserve it. He was terribly discouraged. I am bewildered, he said. I am very unhappy. She turned her pretty, pale face round to him swiftly. It is not you who need be unhappy, she exclaimed. It is I. The next instant she had checked herself again, just as she had done before. Let us talk of something else, she said coldly. It will not be easy for me to do so, he answered, but I will try. Before Olivia went to bed, she had a visit from her. She received her with some embarrassment, it must be confessed. Day by day she felt less at ease with her and more deeply self-convicted of some blundering, which, to a young woman of her temperament, was a sharp penalty. Louisiana would not sit down. She revealed her purpose in coming at once. I want to ask you to make me a promise, she said, and I want to ask your pardon. Don't do that, said Olivia. I want you to promise that you will not tell your brother the truth until you have left here and are at home. I shall go away very soon. I am tired of what I have been doing. It is different from what you meant it to be, but you must promise that if you stay after I have gone, as of course you will not tell him. My home is only a few miles away. You might be tempted, after thinking it over, to come and see me, and I should not like it. I want it all to stop here, I mean my part of it. I don't want to know the rest. Olivia had never felt so helpless in her life. She had neither self-poise, nor tact, nor any other daring quality left. I wish, she faltered, gazing at the girl quite pathetically, I wish we had never begun it. So do I, said Louisiana. Do you promise? Why yes, I would promise anything. I have hurt your feelings, she confessed in an outbreak. She was destined to receive a fresh shock. All at once the girl was metamorphosed again. It was her old, ignorant, sweet, simple self who stood there, with trembling lips and dilated eyes. Yes, you have, she cried. Yes, you have. And she burst into tears and turned about and ran out of the room. Chapter 6. The road to the right. The morning after, Farrell heard an announcement which came upon him like a clap of thunder. After breakfast, as they walked about the grounds, Olivia, who had seemed to be in an abstracted mood, said, without any preface, Miss Rogers returns home tomorrow. Lawrence stopped short in the middle of the path. Tomorrow, he exclaimed. Oh no. He glanced across at Louisiana with an anxious face. Yes, she said, I am going home. To New York. I do not live in New York. She spoke quite simply, but the words were a shock to him. They embarrassed him. There was no coldness in her manner, no displeasure in her tone, but of course, he understood that it would be worse than tactless to inquire further. Was it possible that she did not care that he should know where she lived? There seemed no other construction to be placed upon her words. He flushed a little, and for a few minutes looked rather gloomy, though he quickly recovered himself afterward and changed the subject with creditable readiness. Did not you tell me she lived in New York? He asked Olivia, the first time they were alone together. No, Olivia answered, a trifle sharply. Why New York more than another place? For no reason whatever, really, he returned, more bewildered than ever. There was no reason why I should choose New York, only when I spoke to her of certain places there, she. He paused and thought the matter over carefully before finishing his sentence. He ended it at last in a singular manner. She said nothing, he said. It is actually true, now I think of it, she said nothing whatever. And because she said nothing whatever, began Olivia. He drew his hand across his forehead, with a puzzled gesture. I fancied she looked as if she knew, he said slowly. I am sure she looked as if she knew what I was talking about, as if she knew the places, I mean. It is very queer. There seems no reason in it. Why shouldn't she wish us to know where she lives? I must confess, cried Olivia, that I am getting a little tired of her. It was treacherous and vicious, and she knew it was, but her guilty conscience and her increasing sense of having bungled drove her to desperation. If she had not promised to keep the truth to herself, she would have been only too glad to unburden herself. It was so stupid, after all, and she had only herself to blame. Lawrence drew a long breath. You cannot be tired of her, he said. That is impossible. She takes firmer hold upon one every hour. This was certainly true, as far as he was concerned. He was often even surprised at his own enthusiasm. He had seen so many pretty women that it was almost inconsistent that he should be so much moved by the prettiness of one charming creature, and particularly one who spoke so little, who, after all, was. But there he always found himself at a full stop. He could not say what she was, he did not know yet. Really, he seemed no nearer the solution of the mystery than he had been at first. There lay the fascination. He felt so sure there was an immense deal for him to discover, if he could only discover it. He had an ideal in his mind, and this ideal, he felt confident, was the real creature if he could only see her. During the episode on the upper gallery he fancied he had caught a glimpse of what was to be revealed. The sudden passion on her pale young face, the fire in her eyes, were what he had dreamed of. If he had not been possessed of courage and an honest faith in himself, born of a goodly amount of success, he would have been far more depressed than he was. She was going away, and had not encouraged him to look forward to their meeting again. I own it is rather bad to look at, he said to himself, if one quite believed that fate would serve one such an ill turn. She never played me such a trick, however, and I won't believe she will. I shall see her again sometime. It will turn out fairly enough, surely. So with this consolation he supported himself. There was one day left, and he meant to make the best of it. It was to be spent in driving to a certain mountain, about 10 miles distant. All tourists who were possessed of sufficient energy made this excursion as a matter of duty, if from no more enthusiastic motive. A strong, light carriage and a pair of horses were kept in the hotel stables for the express purpose of conveying guests to this special point. This vehicle Farrell had engaged the day before, and as matters had developed, he had cause to congratulate himself upon the fact. He said to Louisiana what he had before said to himself. We have one day left, and we will make the best of it. Olivia, who stood upon the gallery before which the carriage had been drawn up, glanced at Louisiana furtively. On her part she felt privately that it would be rather hard to make the best of it. She wished that it was well over. But Louisiana did not return her glance. She was looking at Farrell and the horses. She had done something new this morning. She had laid aside her borrowed splendor and attired herself in one of her own dresses, which she had had the boldness to remodel. She had seized a hint from some one of Olivia's possessions, and had given her costume a pretty air of primitive simplicity. It was a plain white lawn, with a little frilled cape or fichu which crossed upon her breast, and was knotted loosely behind. She had a black velvet ribbon around her lithe waist, a rose in her bosom where the fichu crossed, and a broad Gainsborough hat upon her head. One was reminded somewhat of the picturesque young woman of the good old colony times. Farrell, at least, when he first caught sight of her, was reminded of pictures he had seen of them. There was no trace of her last night's fire in her manner. She was quieter than usual through the first part of the drive. She was gentle to submissiveness to Olivia. There was something even tender in her voice once or twice when she addressed her. Lawrence noticed it, and accounted for it naturally enough. She is really fonder of her than she has seemed, he thought, and she is sorry that their parting is so near. He was just arriving at this conclusion when Louisiana touched his arm. "Don't take that road," she said. He drew up his horses and looked at her with surprise. There were two roads before them, and he had been upon the point of taking the one to the right. "But it is the only road to take," he continued. "The other does not lead to the mountain. I was told to be sure to take the road to the right hand." "It is a mistake," she said in a disturbed tone. "The left-hand road leads to the mountain too, at least. We can reach it by striking the wagon road through the woods." Yes, I am sure of it." "But this is the better road. Is there any reason why you prefer the other? Could you pilot us, if you can?" He stopped and looked at her appealingly. He was ready to do anything she wished, but the necessity for his yielding had passed. Her face assumed a set look. "I can't," she answered. "Take the road to the right, why not?" Chapter 7. She ain't your. Farrell was obliged to admit when they turned their faces homeward that the day was hardly a success, after all. Olivia had not been at her best, for some reason or other, and from the moment they had taken the right-hand road Louisiana had been wholly incomprehensible. In her quietest mood she had never worn a cold air before. Today she had been cold and unresponsive. It had struck him that she was absorbed in thinking of something which was quite beyond him. She was plainly not thinking of him, nor of Olivia, nor of the journey they were making. During the drive she had sat with her hands folded upon her lap, her eyes fixed straight before her. She had paid no attention to the scenery, only rousing herself to call their attention to one object. This object was a house they passed, the rambling, low-roofed white house of some well-to-do farmer. It was set upon a small hill and had a long front porch, mottled with blue and white paint in a sanguine attempt at imitating variegated marble. She burst into a low laugh when she saw it. "Look at that," she said. "That is one of the finest houses in the country. The man who owns it is counted a rich man among his neighbors." Farrell put up his eyeglasses to examine it. It is to be deplored that he was a trifle nearsighted. "By George," he said, "that is an idea, isn't it, that marble business? I wonder who did it. Do you know the man who lives there?" "I have heard of him," she answered, "from several people. He is a namesake of mine. His name is Rogers." When they returned to their carriage, after a ramble up the mountainside, they became conscious that the sky had suddenly darkened. Farrell looked up, and his face assumed a rather serious expression. "If either of you is weatherwise," he said, "I wish you would tell me what that cloud means. You have been among the mountains longer than I have." Louisiana glanced upward quickly. "It means a storm," she said, "and a heavy one. We shall be drenched in half an hour." Farrell looked at her white dress and the little frilled fichu, which was her sole protection. "Oh, but that won't do," he exclaimed. "What insanity in me not to think of umbrellas." "Umbrellas," echoed Louisiana. "If we had each 6 umbrellas they could not save us. We may as well get into the carriage. We are only losing time." They were just getting in, when an idea struck Farrell, which caused him to utter an exclamation of ecstatic relief. "Why," he cried, "there is that house we passed. Get in quickly, we can reach there in 20 minutes. Louisiana had her foot upon the step. She stopped short and turned to face him. She changed from red to white and from white to red again, as if with actual terror. "There," she exclaimed, "there." "Yes," he answered. "We can reach there in time to save ourselves. Is there any objection to our going, in the last extremity?" For a second they looked into each other's eyes, and then she turned and sprang into the carriage. She laughed aloud. "Oh no," she said. "Go there, it will be a nice place to stay and the people will amuse you, go there." They reached the house in a quarter of an hour instead of 20 minutes. They had driven fast and kept ahead of the storm, but when they drew up before the picket fence, the clouds were black, and the thunder was rolling behind them. It was Louisiana who got out first. She led the way up the path to the house and mounted the steps of the variegated porch. She did not knock at the door, which stood open, but somewhat to Fermi's amazement, walked at once into the front room, which was plainly the room of state. Not to put too fine a point upon it, it was a hideous room. The ceiling was so low that Farrell felt as if he must knock his head against it. It was papered, ceiling and all with paper of an unwholesome yellow enlivened with large blue flowers. There was a bedstead in one corner, and the walls were ornamented with colored lithographs of moon-faced houris, with round eyes and round, red cheeks, and wearing low-necked dresses and flowers in their bosoms, and bright yellow gold necklaces. These works of art were the first things which caught Farrell's eye, and he went slowly up to the most remarkable and stood before it, regarding it with mingled wonderment and awe. He turned from it after a few seconds to look at Louisiana, who stood near him, and he beheld what seemed to him a phenomenon. He had never seen her blush before as other women blush. Now she was blushing, burning red from chin to brow. There is no one in this part of the house," she said. I know more of these people than you do. I will go and try to find someone." She was gone before he could interpose. Not that he would have interposed, perhaps. Somehow, without knowing why, he felt as if she did know more of the situation than he did, almost as if she were, in a manner, doing the honors for the time being. She crossed the passage with a quick, uneven step, and made her way, as if well used to the place, into the kitchen at the back of the house. A stout Negro woman stood at a table, filling a pan with newly made biscuits. Her back was toward the door, and she did not see who entered. "Aunt Cassandry," the girl began when the woman turned toward her. "Who's dar?" she exclaimed. "Lor, honey, how ye skeert me, I ain't no Sandry." The face she turned was a strange one, and it showed no sign of recognition of her visitor. It was an odd thing that the sight of her unfamiliar face should have been a shock to Louisiana, but it was a shock. She put her hand to her side. Where is Mr. Rogers?" she asked. "I want to see him." "Out on de back potch, honey, right now, dar he goes." The girl heard him and flew out to meet him. Her heart was throbbing hard, and she was drawing quick, short breaths. "Father," she cried, "Father, don't go in the house." And she caught him by both shoulders and drew him round. He did not know her at first in her fanciful simple dress and her Gainsborough hat. He was not used to that style of thing, believing that it belonged rather to the world of pictures. He stared at her, then he broke out with an exclamation. "Lo ardi, Louisiana." She kept her eyes on his face. They were feverishly bright, and her cheeks were hot. She laughed hysterically. "Don't speak loud," she said. "There are some strange people in the house, and I want to tell you something." He was a slow man, and it took him some time to grasp the fact that she was really before him in the flesh. He said again, "Lord Louisiana," adding cheerfully, "how ye have surprised me." Then he took in afresh the change in her dress. There was a pile of stovewood stacked on the porch to be ready for use, and he sat down on it to look at her. "Why, ye have got a new dress on," he said. "That thar's what made ye look sorter cur'ous, I hardly knowed ye." Then he remembered what she had said on first seeing him. "Why don't you want me to go in the house?" he asked. "What sort o' folks air they?" "They came with me from the Springs," she answered, and I want to play a joke on them." She put her hands up to her burning cheeks and stood so. "A joke on 'em," he repeated. "Yes," she said, speaking very fast. "They don't know I live here, they think I came from some city, they took the notion themselves, and I want to let them think so until we go away from the house. It will be such a good joke." She tried to laugh, but broke off in the middle of a harsh sound. Her father, with one copperas-colored leg crossed over the other, was chewing his tobacco slowly, after the manner of a ruminating animal, while he watched her. "Don't you see?" she asked. "While no," he answered, "not rightly." She actually assumed a kind of spectral gaiety. "I never thought of it until I saw it was not Cassandry who was in the kitchen," she said. "The woman who is there didn't know me, and it came into my mind that we might play off on them," using the phraseology to which he was the most accustomed. "Vol we mought," he admitted with a speculative deliberateness. "That's so, we mought if thar was any use in it." "It's only for a joke," she persisted hurriedly. "That's so," he repeated, "that's so." He got up slowly, and rather lumberingly from his seat, and dusted the chips from his copperas-colored legs. "Hev ye been enj'yin' yourself, Louisiana?" he asked. "Yes," she answered, "never better." "Ye must hev," he returned, "or ye wouldn't be in sperrits to play jokes." Then he changed his tone so suddenly that she was startled. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. She put her hand on his shoulder and tried to laugh again. "To pretend you don't know me, to pretend I have never been here before. That's joke enough, isn't it? They will think so when I tell them the truth. You slow old father, why don't you laugh?" "Perhaps," he said, "it's on account o' me bane's slow, Louisiana. Meb I shall begin arter a while." "Don't begin at the wrong time," she said, still keeping up her feverish laugh, "or you'll spoil it all. Now come along in and pretend you don't know me," she continued, drawing him forward by the arm. "They might suspect something if we stay so long. All you've got to do is to pretend you don't know me." "That's so, Louisiana," with a kindly glance downward at her excited face as he followed her out. "Thar ain't no call fer me to do nothin' else, is there? Just pretend I don't know ye." It was wonderful how well he did it, too. When she preceded him into the room, the girl was quivering with excitement. He might break down, and it would be all over in a second. But she looked Farrell boldly in the face when she made her first speech. "This is the gentleman of the house," she said. "I found him on the back porch. He had just come in. He has been kind enough to say we may stay until the storm is over." "Oh yes," said he hospitably, "stay and welcome. Ye ain't the first as has stopped over. Storms come up sorter suddent, and we hain't the kind as turns folks away." Farrell thanked him, Olivia joining in with a murmur of gratitude. They were very much indebted to him for his hospitality. They considered themselves very fortunate. Their host received their protestations with much equanimity. "If ye'd like to set out on the front porch and watch the storm come up," he said, "thar's seats thar, or would ye druther set here? Women folks is generally fond o' settin' indoors whar thar's a parlor." But they preferred the porch, and followed him out upon it. Having seen them seated, he took a chair himself. It was a split-seated chair, painted green, and he tilted it back against a pillar of the porch and applied himself to the full enjoyment of a position more remarkable for ease than elegance. Farrell regarded him with stealthy rapture and drank in every word he uttered. This, he had exclaimed delightedly to Olivia in private. "Why, this is delightful. These are the people we have read of. I scarcely believed in them before. I would not have missed it for the world." In general now, their entertainer proceeded, "Women folk is fonder a settin' in parlors. My wife was powerful sot on her parlor. She wasn't never satisfied till she hed one and hed it fixed up to her notion. She was allers traddin' fur picters fur it. She tuck a heap o' pride in her picters. She allers had it in her mind that her little gal should have a showy parlor when she growed up." "You have a daughter," said Farrell. Their host hitched his chair a little to one side. He bent forward to expectorate, and then answered with his eyes fixed upon some distant point toward the mountains. "Why, yes," he said, "but she ain't your Louisiana ain't." Miss Farrell gave a little start, and immediately made an effort to appear entirely at ease. "Did you say," asked Farrell, "that your daughter's name was?" "Louisiana," promptly. "I come from thar." Louisiana got up and walked to the opposite end of the porch. "The storm will be upon us in a few minutes," she said. "It is beginning to rain now. Come and look at this cloud driving over the mountain top." Farrell rose and went to her. He stood for a moment looking at the cloud, but plainly not thinking of it. "His daughter's name is Louisiana," he said in an undertone. "Louisiana, isn't that delicious?" Suddenly, even as he spoke, a new idea occurred to him. "Why," he exclaimed, "your name is Louise, isn't it? I think Olivia said so." "Yes," she answered, "my name is Louise." "How should you have liked it," he inquired absent-mindedly, "if it had been Louisiana?" She answered him with a hard coolness, which it startled him afterward to remember. "How would you have liked it?" she said. They were driven back just then by the rain, which began to beat in upon their end of the porch. They were obliged to return to Olivia and Mr. Rogers, who were engaged in an animated conversation. The fact was that, in her momentary excitement, Olivia had plunged into conversation as a refuge. She had suddenly poured forth a stream of remark and query which had the effect of spurring up her companion to a like exhibition of frankness. He had been asking questions, too. "She's been tellin' me," he said as Farrell approached, "that you're a literary man and write fur the papers novel stories and poems and things. I never seen one before, not as I know on." "I wonder why not," remarked Farrell. "We are plentiful enough." "Air ye now?" he asked reflectively. "I had an itty thar was only one on ye now an agin, just now an agin." He paused there to shake his head. I've often wondered how you could do it, he said. I couldn't. Tharsamas thinks they could if they tried, but I wa'n't never that away, I wa'n't never that away. I hain't no iddy I could do it, not if I tried ever so. Seems to me, he went on with the air of making an announcement of so novel a nature that he must present it modestly, seems to me now as if them as does it must have a kinder gift for it, now. Lord, I couldn't write a novel. I wouldn't know where to begin. It is difficult to decide where, said Farrell. He did not smile at all. His manner was perfect, so full of interest, indeed, that Mr. Rogers quite warmed and expanded under it. The scenes on 'em all now, Bain, mostly laid in Baghdad, would be agin me, if nothing else war, he proceeded. Being laid, queried Farrell. In Baghdad or while, furrin parts thereabouts. You see I couldn't tell nothin' much about no place but North Callanny, and folks wouldn't buy it. But why not? Exclaimed Farrell. Why Lord bless ye, he said hilariously, they'd know it wa'n't true, they'd say in a minute. Why thar's that fool Rogers been a-written a pack o' lies that ain't a word on it true. Thar ain't no castles in Hamilton County, and thar ain't no folks like these yer. It just ain't so. I loathe that thar was the reason the novel writers allers writ about things happenin' in Baghdad. Ye kin say most anythin' ye like about Baghdad and no one can't contradict ye. I don't seem to remember many novels of that particular description, remarked Farrell in a rather low voice. Perhaps my memory. You don't? He queried in much surprise. Vol now just you notice and see if it ain't so. I hain't read many novels myself. I hain't read but one. Oh, interposed Farrell. And it was a story of life in Baghdad. Yes, and I've heard tell of others as was the same. Hans Claiborne now, he was a-tellin' me of one. He checked himself to speak to the Negro woman, who had presented herself at a room door. We're common, Nancy, he said with an air of good fellowship. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he added, rising from his chair, walk in and have some supper. Farrell and Olivia rose with some hesitation. You are very kind, they said. We did not intend to give you trouble. Trouble, he replied as if scarcely comprehending. This yer ain't no trouble, ye hain't been in North Callanny before, have ye? He continued good-naturedly. We're bound to have ye eat if ye stay with us long enough. We wouldn't let ye go way without eatin', bless ye. We ain't that kind. Walk straight in. He led them into a long, low room, half kitchen, half dining room. It was not so ugly as the room of state, because it was entirely unadorned. Its sealed walls were painted brown and stained with many a winter's smoke. The pine table was spread with a clean homespun cloth and heaped with well-cooked, appetizing food. If ye can put up with country fare, ye'll not find it so bad, said the host. Nancy prides herself on her way o' doin' things. There never was more kindly hospitality, Farrell thought. The simple generosity which made them favored guests at once warmed and touched him. He glanced across at Louisiana to see if she was not as much pleased as he was himself, but the food upon her plate remained almost untouched. There was a strange look on her face. She was deadly pale and her downcast eyes shone under their lashes. She did not look at their host at all. It struck Farrell that she avoided looking at him with a strong effort. Her pallor made him anxious. You are not well, he said to her. You do not look well at all. Their host started and turned toward her. Why no ye ain't, he exclaimed, quite tremulously. Lord no, ye can't be, ye hain't no color. What's the trouble, Lou Lord? I was gwine to call ye Louisiany, and she ain't yer, Louisiany ain't. He ended with a nervous laugh. I'm used to talkin' a heap o' care on her, he said. I've lost 10 on 'em, and she's all that's left me, and I think a heap on her. I wish she was yer. You mustn't get sick, ma'am. The girl got up hurriedly. I am not sick really, she said. The thunder, I have a little headache. I will go out onto the porch, it's clearing up now. The fresh air will do me good. The old man rose too, with rather a flurried manner. If Louisiany was yer, he faltered, she could give ye something to help ye. Campfire now, sperrits of campfire, let me get ye some. No, no, said the girl, no thank you. And she slipped out of the door and was gone. Mr. Rogers sat down again with a sigh. I wish she'd let me get her some, he said wistfully. I know how it is with young critters like that. They're delicate, anxiously. Lord, they're delicate. They'd oughter hev their mothers round 'em. I know how it is with Louisiany. A cloud seemed to settle upon him. He rubbed his grizzled chin with his hand again and again, glancing at the open door as he did it. It was evident that his heart was outside with the girl who was like Louisiany. Chapter 8. Nothing has hurt you. The storm was quite over, and the sun was setting in flames of gold when the meal was ended and they went out on the porch again. Mr. Rogers had scarcely recovered himself, but he had made an effort to do so, and had so far succeeded as to begin to describe the nature of the one novel he had read. Still, he had rubbed his chin and kept his eye uneasily on the door all the time he had been talking. It was about a Frenchman, he said seriously, and his name was Francos, Francois Francos. That thar's a French name, ain't it? Me and Ianthe load it was common to the country. It don't belong yer, Francos don't, and it's got a furrin sound. Yes, it is a French name, assented Farrell. A few minutes afterward they went out. Louisiana stood at the end of the porch, leaning against a wooden pillar and twisting an arm around it. Are ye better? Mr. Rogers asked. I am goin' to tend to my stock, and if ye ain't, meb the campfire, sperrits of campfire. I don't need it, she answered. I am quite well. So he went away and left them, promising to return shortly and gear up their critters, for them that they might go on their way. When he was gone, there was a silence of a few seconds which Farrell could not exactly account for. Almost for the first time in his manhood, he did not know what to say. Gradually, there had settled upon him the conviction that something had gone very wrong indeed, that there was something mysterious and complicated at work, that somehow he himself was involved, and that his position was at once a most singular and delicate one. It was several moments before he could decide that his best plan seemed to be to try to conceal his bewilderment and appear at ease. And very naturally, the speech he chose to begin with was the most unlucky he could have hit upon. He is charming, he said. What a lovable old fellow, what a delicious old fellow, he has been telling me about the novel. It is the story of a Frenchman and his name, try to guess his name. But Louisiana did not try. You couldn't guess it, he went on. It is better than all the rest, his name was Francos. That instant she turned round. She was shaking all over like a leaf. Good heavens, flashed through his mind. This is a climax, this is the real creature. Don't laugh again, she cried. Don't dare to laugh, I won't bear it, he is my father. For a second or so, he had not the breath to speak. Your father, he said when he found his voice. Your father, yours. Yes, she answered, mine, this is my home. I have lived here all my life, my name is Louisiana. You have laughed at me too. It was the real creature indeed whom he saw. She burst into passionate tears. Do you think that I kept up this pretense today because I was ashamed of him? She said. Do you think I did it because I did not love him and respect him and think him better than all the rest of the world? It was because I loved him so much that I did it, because I knew so well that you would say to each other that he was not like me, that he was rougher, and that it was a wonder I belonged to him. It is a wonder I belong to him. I am not worthy to kiss his shoes. I have been ashamed. I have been bad enough for that, but not bad enough to be ashamed of him. I thought at first it would be better to let you believe what you would, that it would soon be over, and we should never see each other again, but I did not think that I should have to sit by and see you laugh because he does not know the world as you do, because he has always lived his simple, good life in one simple, country place. Farrell had grown as pale as she was herself. He groaned aloud. Oh, he cried, what shall I say to you? For heaven's sake try to understand that it is not at him I have laughed but— He has never been away from home, she broke in. He has worked too hard to have time to read, and she stopped and dropped her hands with a gesture of unutterable pride. Why should I tell you that? She said. It sounds as if I were apologizing for him, and there is no need that I should. If I could understand, began Farrell, if I could realize. Ask your sister, she replied. It was her plan, I with a little sob, am only her experiment. Olivia came forward, looking wholly subdued. Her eyes were wet too. It is true, she said, it is all my fault. May I ask you to explain, said Farrell rather sternly. I suppose some of this has been for my benefit. Don't speak in that tone, said Olivia. It is bad enough as it is. I never was so wretched in my life, I never dreamed of its turning out in this way. She was so pretty and gentle and quick to take a hint, and I wanted to try the experiment to see if you would guess at the truth. I had a theory, and I was so much interested that I forgot to think of her very much. I did not think she would care. Louisiana broke in. Yes, she said, her eyes bright with pain, she forgot. I was very fond of her and I knew so very little that she forgot to think of me. I was only a kind of plaything, but I was too proud to remind her. I thought it would be soon over and I knew how ignorant I was. I was afraid to trust my feelings at first. I thought perhaps it was vanity and I ought to crush it down. I was very fond of her. Oh, cried Olivia piteously, don't say was Louise. Don't say Louise, was the reply. Say Louisiana. I am not ashamed of it now. I want Mr. Farrell to hear it. I have nothing to say in self-defense, Lawrence replied, hopelessly. There is nothing for any of us to say but goodbye, said Louisiana. We shall never see each other again. It is all over between us. You will go your way and I shall go mine. I shall stay here tonight. You must drive back to the Springs without me. I ought never to have gone there. Lawrence threw himself into a chair and sat shading his face with his hand. He stared from under it at the shining wet grass and leaves. Even yet he scarcely believed that all this was true. He felt as if he were walking in a dream. The worst of it was this desperate feeling that there was nothing for him to say. There was a long silence, but at last Louisiana left her place and came and stood before him. I am going to meet my father, she said. I persuaded him that I was only playing a joke. He thought it was one of my fancies, and he helped me out because I asked him to do it. I am going to tell him that I have told you the truth. He won't know why I did it. I will make it easy for you. I shall not see you again. Goodbye. Farrell's misery got the better of him. I can't bear this, he cried, springing up. I can't indeed. She drew back. Why not, she said, nothing has hurt you. The simple coldness of her manner was very hard upon him, indeed. You think I have no right to complain, he answered. And yet see how you send me away. You speak as if you did not intend to let me see you again. No, she interposed, you shall not see me again. Why should you? Ask your sister to tell you how ignorant I am. She knows. Why should you come here? There would always be as much to laugh at as there has been today. Go where you need not laugh. This is not the place for you. Goodbye. Then he knew he need say no more. She spoke with a child's passion and with a woman's proud obstinacy. Then she turned to Olivia. He was thrilled to the heart as he watched her while she did it. Her eyes were full of tears, but she had put both her hands behind her. Goodbye, she said. Olivia broke down altogether. Is that the way you are going to say goodbye? She cried. I did not think you were so hard, if I had meant any harm, but I didn't, and you look as if you never would forgive me. I may some time, answered the girl. I don't yet. I did not think I was so hard either. Her hands fell at her sides, and she stood trembling a second. All at once she had broken down, too. I loved you, she said, but you did not love me. And then she turned away and walked slowly into the house. It was almost half an hour before their host came to them, with the news that their carriage was ready. He looked rather off-colored himself and wore a wearied air, but he was very uncommunicative. Louisiana lo'd she'd go to bed and sleep off her headache, instead of goin' back to the Springs, he said. I'll be thar in a day or two to tend to her bill and the rest on it. I low the waters hain't done her much good. She ain't at herself rightly. I knowed she wasn't when she was so notionate this evenin'. She ain't notionate when she's at herself. We are much indebted to you for your kindness, said Farrell, when he took the reins. Oh, that ain't nothin', you're welcome. You'd hev he a better time if Louisiana had been at herself. Goodbye to ye, ye'll hev plenty of moonlight to see ye home. Their long ride was a silent one. When they reached the end of it, and Olivia had been helped out of the carriage, and stood in the moonlight upon the deserted gallery, where she had stood with Louisiana in the morning, she looked very suitably miserable. Lawrence, she said, I don't exactly see why you should feel so very severe about it. I am sure I am as abject as anyone could wish. He stood a moment in silence, looking absently out on the moonlight-flooded lawn. Everything was still, and wore an air of desolation. We won't talk about it, he said at last, but you have done me an ill turn, Olivia. Chapter 9. Don't ye, Louisiana. As he said it, Louisiana was at home in the house-room, sitting on a low chair at her father's knee and looking into the fire. She had not gone to bed. When he returned to the house, her father had found her sitting here, and she had not left her place since. A wood fire had been lighted, because the mountain air was cool after the rains, and she seemed to like to sit and watch it and think. Mr. Rogers himself was in a thoughtful mood. After leaving his departing guests, he had settled down with some deliberation. He had closed the doors and brought forward his favorite wooden-backed, split-seated chair. Then he had seated himself, and drawing forth his twist of tobacco had cut off a goodly chaw. He moved slowly and wore a serious and somewhat abstracted air. Afterward he tilted backward a little, crossed his legs, and proceeded to ruminate. Louisiana, he said, Louisiana, I'd like to hear the rights of it. She answered him in a low voice. It is not worth telling, she said. It was a very poor joke after all. He gave her a quick side glance, rubbing his crossed legs slowly. Was it, he remarked, a poor one after all? Why that's bad. The quiet patience of his face was a study. He went on rubbing his leg, even more slowly than before. That's bad, he said again. Now, what do you think was the trouble, Louisiana? I made a mistake, she answered. That was all. Suddenly she turned to him, and laid her folded arms on his knee and her face upon them, sobbing. I oughtn't to have gone, she cried. I ought to have stayed at home with you, father. His face flushed, and he was obliged to relieve his feelings by expectorating into the fire. Louisiana, he said, I'd like to ask you one question. Was thar anybody thar as didn't show ye respect, as was slighty or free or unconsiderate? For instance, any literary man jest for instance now. No, she answered. They were very kind to me always. Don't be afeard to tell me, Louisiana, he put it to her. I only said for instance, havin' hearn as literary men was sometimes, now and again, that-a-way now and agin. They were very good to me, she repeated, always. If they was, he returned, I'm glad of it. I'm gettin' old, Louisiana, and I hain't much health dyspepsy's what tells on a man, he went on deliberately. But if thar'd been anyone as he done it, I'd hev he to settle it with him. I'd hev he to have settled it with him, liver or no liver. He put his hand on her head and gave it a slow little rub, the wrong way but tenderly. I ain't goin' to ask ye no more questions, he said, except in one. Is thar anything like to hev done in the house in the parlor, for instance, now bossin' we was to say in the parlor? No, she cried. Let it stay as it is, let it all stay as it is. While, he said meditatively, ye know thar ain't no reason why it should, Louisiana, if ye'd like to hev it fixed up more or different. If ye'd like a new paper, say a flowerier one, or a new set of cheers and things. Up to Lawyer Hodgson's I seen 'em with red seats to 'em, and seemed like they did set things off sorter. If ye'd like to hev some, thar ain't no reason why ye shouldn't. Things has gone purty well with me, and thar ain't none left but you, honey, Lord, he added, in a queer burst of tenderness. Why shouldn't ye hev things if ye want 'em? I don't want them, she protested. I want nothing but you. For a moment there was a dead silence. He kept his eyes fixed on the fire. He seemed to be turning something over in his mind, but at last he spoke. Don't ye, Louisiana, he said. No, she answered, nothing. And she drew his hand under her cheek and kissed it. He took it very quietly. Ye have got a kind heart, Louisiana, he said. Young folks generally has, I think, it's sorter natural, but Lord, thar's other things besides us old folks, and it's natural as ye'd want 'em. Thar's things as kin be altered, and thar's things as can't. Let's alter them as kin. If ye'd like a cupola put on the house, or say a coat of yaller buff paint, Sawyer's new house is yaller buff, and it's mighty showy, or a organ or a peony or more dressin', ye shall have 'em. Them's things as it ain't too late to set right, and ye shall have 'em. But she only cried the more in a soft, hushed way. Oh, don't be so good to me, she said. Don't be so good and kind. He went on as quietly as before. If, for instance, it was me as was to be altered, Louisiana, I'm afeard we couldn't do it. I'm afeard as I've been let run too long, just to put it that way. We mought hev done it if we'd hev begun earlier, say 40 or 50 year back, but I'm afeard we couldn't do it now. Not as I wouldn't be willin', I wouldn't hev a thing agin it, and I'd try my best, but it's late. Thar's war it is. If it was me as he'd to be altered, made more moderner, and to know more, and to hev more style, I'm afeard thar'd be a heap o' trouble. Style didn't never seem to come natural to me somehow. I'm one o' them things as can't be altered. Let's alter them as kin. I don't want you altered, she protested. Oh, why should I when you are such a good father, such a dear father? And there was a little silence again, and at the end of it he said, in a gentle, forbearing voice, just as he had said before. Don't ye, Louisiana. They sat silent again for some time afterward, indeed, but little more was said until they separated for the night. Then, when she kissed him and clung for a moment round his neck, he suddenly roused himself from his prolonged reverie. Lord, he said quite cheerfully, it can't last long at the longest, arter all, and you're young yet you're young. What can't last long? She asked timidly. He looked into her eyes and smiled. Nothin', he answered, nothin' can't, nothin' don't, and you're young. And he was so far moved by his secret thought that he smoothed her hair from her forehead the wrong way again with a light touch, before he let her go. Chapter 10. The great world. The next morning, he went to the springs. I'll go and settle up and bring you your trunk and things, he said. Meb I mayn't get back till tomorrow, so don't you be wannassy. Ef I feel tired when I get thar, I'll stay overnight. She did not think it likely he would stay. She had never known him to remain away from home during a night unless he had been compelled to do so by business. He had always been too childishly fond of his home to be happy away from it. He liked the routine he had been used to through 40 years, the rising at daylight, the regular common duties he assumed as his share, his own seat on the hearth or porch and at table. Folks may be clever enough, he used to say. They air clever as a rule, but it don't come natural to be away. Thar ain't nothing like home and home ways. But he did not return that night, or even the next morning. It was dusk the next evening before Louisiana heard the buggy wheels on the road. She had been sitting on the porch, and rose to greet him when he drove up and descended from his conveyance rather stiffly. You wasn't wannassy, was ye? He asked. No, she answered, only it seemed strange to know you were away. I hain't done it but 3 times since me and Ianthe was married, he said. 2 o' them times was conference to Barnesville, and one was when Marcelli died. When he mounted the porch steps, he looked up at her, with a smile on his weather-beaten face. Was ye lonesome? He asked. I bet ye was. A little, she replied, not very. She gave him his chair against the wooden pillar, and watched him as he tilted back and balanced himself on its back legs. She saw something new and disturbed in his face and manner. It was as if the bit of outside life he had seen had left temporary traces upon him. She wondered very much how it had impressed him and what he was thinking about. And after a short time he told her. Ye must be lonesome, he said. Arter stayin' down thar, it's natural. A body don't know until they see it theirselves it's gay thar. Lord, yes, it's gay, and what suits young folks is to be gay. Some of the people who were there did not think it was gay, Louisiana said, a little listlessly. They were used to gayer places, and they often called it dull, but it seemed very gay to me. I shouldn't want it no gayer myself, he returned seriously. Not if I was young folks. Thar must have been 300 on 'em in thet thar dinnin' room. The names o' the vittles writ down on paper to pick and choose from, and 50 or 60 waiters flyin' round. And the dressin', I sawed and watched 'em as they come in. I sawed and watched 'em all day. Thar was a heap o' curiosities in the way of dressin' I never seen before. I went into the dancin' room at night, too, and sot thar a spell and watched 'em. They played a play. Some on 'em put little caps and aprons on and rosettes and fixins. They sorter danced in it, and they hed music while they was doin' it. It was purty, too, if a body could have follered it out. It is a dance they call the German, said Louisiana, remembering with a pang the first night she had seen it, as she sat at her new friend's side. German is it, he said, with evident satisfaction at making the discovery. Vol now, I ain't surprised. It hed a kinder Dutch look to me, kinder Dutch and furrin. Just then Nancy announced that his supper was ready, and he went in, but on the threshold he stopped and spoke again. Them folks as was here, he said, they'd gone. They started the next mornin' arter they was here. They live up north somewheres and they've went thar. After he had gone in, Louisiana sat still for a little while. The moon was rising and she watched it until it climbed above the treetops and shone bright and clear. Then one desperate little sob broke from her. Only one, for she choked the next in its birth, and got up and turned toward the house, and the room in which the kerosene lamp burned on the supper table. I'll go and talk to him, she said. He likes to have me with him, and it will be better than sitting here. She went in and sat near him, resting her elbows upon the table and her chin on her hands, and tried to begin to talk. But it was not very easy. She found that she had a tendency to fall back in long silent pauses, in which she simply looked at him with sad, tender eyes. I stopped at Casey's as I came on, he said at last. That thar was one thing as made me late. Thar's somethin' I hed on my mind fur him to do fur me. For Casey to do, she said. He poured his coffee into his saucer, and answered with a heavy effort, at speaking unconcernedly. I'm agin to hev him fix the house, he said. She was going to ask him what he meant to have done, but he did not give her time. Ianthe and me, he said, we'd useter say we'd do it sometime, and I'm agin to do it now. The rooms now they're low war they're not to say small, they're low and an old-timey. Thar ain't no style to 'em. Them rooms to the springs now they've got style to 'em, and rooms can be altered easy enough. He drank his coffee slowly, set his saucer down, and went on with the same serious air of having broached an ordinary subject. "Goin' to the Springs has sorter started me off," he said. "Seein' things different does start a man off. Casey and his men'll be here Monday." "It seems so sudden," Louisiana said. She gave a slow, wondering glance at the old smoke-stained room. "I can hardly fancy it looking any other way than this. It won't be the same place at all." He glanced around, too, with a start. His glance was hurried and nervous. "Why no," he said, "it won't, but it'll be stylisher. It'll be kinder unfamiliar at first, but I dis say we shall get used to it, and it'll be stylisher. And style war thar's young folks, that's what's wanted style." She was so puzzled by his manner that she sat regarding him with wonder. But he went on talking steadily about his plans until the meal was over. He talked of them when they went back to the porch together and sat in the moonlight. He scarcely gave her an opportunity to speak. Once or twice, the idea vaguely occurred to her that for some reason he did not want her to talk. It was a relief to her only to be called upon to listen, but still she was puzzled. "When we get fixed up," he said, "ye can hev your friends yer. Thar's them folks now as was yer the other day from the Springs. When we're fixed up ye mought invite 'em next summer, fur instance. Like as not I shall be away myself and ye'd hev room a-plenty. Ye wouldn't need me, ye see. And, Lord, how it'd surprise 'em to come and find ye all fixed." "I should never ask them," she cried impetuously. "And they wouldn't come if I did." "Meb they would," he responded gravely, "if he was fixed up." "I don't want them," she said passionately. "Let them keep their place, I don't want them." "Don't ye," he said in his quiet voice. "Don't ye, Louisiana." And he seemed to sink into a reverie, and did not speak again for quite a long time. Chapter 11. A Rusty Nail. On Monday Casey and his men came. Louisiana and her father were at breakfast when they struck their first blow at the end of the house, which was to be renovated first. The old man, hearing it, started violently, so violently that he almost upset the coffee at his elbow. He laughed a tremulous sort of laugh. "Why, I'm narvous," he said, "now just to think o' me bane narvous." "I suppose," said Louisiana, "I am nervous as well. It made me start too. It had such a strange sound." "Vol now," he answered, "come to think on it, it hed sorter. Seems like it wasn't scasely natural. P'raps that's it." Neither of them ate much breakfast, and when the meal was over they went out together to look at the workmen. They were very busy tearing off weatherboarding and wrenching out nails. Louisiana watched them with regretful eyes. In secret she was wishing that the low ceilings and painted walls might remain as they were. She had known them so long. "I am afraid he is doing it to please me," she thought. "He does not believe me when I say I don't want it altered. He would never have had it done for himself." Her father had seated himself on a pile of plank. He was rubbing his crossed leg as usual, but his hand trembled slightly. "I druv them nails in myself," he said. "Ianthe wasn't but 19. She'd set yer and watch me. It was 2 or 3 months arter we was married. She was mighty proud on it when it was all done. Little Tom he was born in thet thar room. The rest on 'em was born in the front room, and they all died thar. Ianthe she died thar. I'd used her think I should." He stopped and glanced suddenly at Louisiana. He pulled himself up and smiled. "Ye ain't in the notion o' heaven the cupolly," he said. "We kin hev it as soon as not, and seems termy thar's a heap o' style to 'em." "Anything that pleases you will please me, father," she said. He gave her a mild, cheerful look. "Ye don't take much interest in it yet, do ye?" he said, "but ye will when it gets along kinder. Lord, ye'll be as impatient as Ianthe and me war when it gets along." She tried to think she would, but without very much success. She lingered about for a while and at last went to her own room at the other end of the house and shut herself in. Her trunk had been carried upstairs and set in its old place behind the door. She opened it and began to drag out the dresses and other adornments she had taken with her to the Springs. There was the blue muslin. She threw it on the floor and dropped beside it, half sitting, half kneeling. She laughed quite savagely. "I thought it was very nice when I made it," she said. "I wonder how she would like to wear it." She pulled out one thing after another until the floor around her was strewn. Then she got up and left them, and ran to the bed and threw herself into a chair beside it, hiding her face in the pillow. "Oh, how dull it is and how lonely," she said. "What shall I do, what shall I do?" And while she sobbed, she heard the blows upon the boards below. Before she went downstairs, she replaced the things she had taken from the trunk. She packed them away neatly, and having done it, turned the key upon them. "Father," she said at dinner, "there are some things upstairs I want to send to Cousin Jenny. I have done with them and I think she'd like to have them." "Dresses and things, Luciani," he said. "Yes," she answered, "I shall not need them any more, I don't care for them." "Don't," he began, but stopped short, and lifting his glass, swallowed the rest of the sentence in a large glass of milk. "I'll tell Leander to send for it," he said afterward. "Jenny'll be real sot up, I reckon, her pappy Bane's so unfortunate she don't get much." He ate scarcely more dinner than breakfast, and spent the afternoon in wandering here and there among the workmen. Sometimes he talked to them, and sometimes sat on his pile of plank and watched them in silence. Once, when no one was looking, he stooped down and picked up a rusty nail which had fallen from its place in a piece of board. After holding it in his hand for a little, he furtively thrust it into his pocket, and seemed to experience a sense of relief after he had done it. "Ye don't do nothin' toward helpin' us, Uncle Elbert," said one of the young men. Every youngster within 10 miles knew him as Uncle Elbert. "Ye ain't as smart as ye was when last ye built, air ye?" "No, boys," he answered, "I ain't, that's so. I ain't as smart an," he added rather hurriedly, "it'd sorter go agin me to holp ye at what ye're doin' now. Not as I don't think it's time it was done, but it'd sorter go agin me." When Louisiana entered the house room at dusk, she found him sitting by the fire, his body drooping forward, his head resting listlessly on his hand. "I've got a touch o' dyspepsy, Louisiany," he said, "and the knockin' he's kinder give me a headache. I'll go to bed early." Chapter 12. Meb. She had been so full of her own sharp pain and humiliation during the first few days that perhaps she had not been so quick to see as she would otherwise have been. But the time soon came when she awakened to a bewildered sense of new and strange trouble. She scarcely knew when it was that she first began to fancy that some change had taken place in her father. It was a change she could not comprehend when she recognized its presence. It was no alteration of his old, slow, quiet faithfulness to her. He had never been so faithfully tender. The first thing which awakened her thought of change was his redoubled tenderness. She found that he watched her constantly, in a patient, anxious way. When they were together, she often discovered that he kept his eyes fixed upon her when he thought she was not aware of his gaze. He seemed reluctant to leave her alone, and continually managed to be near her, and yet it grew upon her at last that the old, homely good fellowship between them had somehow been broken in upon, and existed no longer. It was not that he loved her any less, she was sure of that, but she had lost something, without knowing when or how she had lost it, or even exactly what it was. But his anxiety to please her grew day by day. He hurried the men who were at work upon the house. "Louisiany shall enjoy it when it's done," he said to them. "Hurry up, boys, and do your plumb best." She had been at home about 2 weeks when he began to drive over to the nearest depot every day at train time. It was about 3 miles distant, and he went over for several days in his spring wagon. At first he said nothing of his reason for making the journey, but one morning, as he stood at his horses' heads, he said to Louisiana, without turning to look at her, and affecting to be very busy with some portion of the harness, "I've been expectin' of some things fur a day or so, and they hain't come. I wasn't sure when I oughter to look fur 'em, meb I've been lookin' too soon, fur they hain't come yet." "Where were they to come from?" she asked. From New York City." "From New York," she echoed, trying to show an interest. "I did not know you sent there, father." "I hain't never done it afore," he answered. "These your things, meb they'll come today, and then ye'll see 'em." She asked no further questions, fancying that he had been buying some adornments for the new rooms which were to be a surprise for her. After he had gone away, she thought a little sadly of his kindness to her, and her unworthiness of it. At noon, he came back and brought his prize with him. He drove up slowly with it behind him in the wagon, a large, shining, new trunk, quite as big and ponderous as any she had seen at the Springs. He got down and came up to her as she stood on the porch. He put his hand on her shoulder. "I'll hev 'em tooken and ye kin look at 'em," he said. "It's some new things ye was needin'." She began to guess dimly at what he meant, but she followed the trunk into the house without speaking. When they set it down, she stood near while her father fumbled for the key and found it, turned it in the lock and threw back the lid. "There's some things ye was needin'," he said. "I hope ye'll like 'em, honey." She did not know what it was in his voice, or his face, or his simple manner that moved her so, but she did not look at what he had brought at all. She ran to him and caught his arm, dropped her face on it, and burst into tears. "Father, father," she cried. "Oh, father." Look at 'em, Louisiana, he persisted gently, and see if they suit ye. Thar ain't no reason to cry, honey. The words checked her and made her feel uncertain and bewildered again. She stopped crying and looked up at him, wondering if her emotion troubled him, but he did not meet her eye, and only seemed anxious that she should see what he had brought. I didn't tell ye all I hed in my mind when I went to the springs, he said. I hed a notion I'd like to see fur myself how things was. I knowed ye'd hev an itty that ye couldn't ask me fur the kind o' things ye wanted, and I knowed nothin' about what they was, so I says to myself, I'll go and stay a day and watch and find out. And I went, and I found out. Thar was a young woman thar as was dressed purtier than any of 'em. And she was clever and friendly, and I managed it so we got a talkin'. She hed on a dress that took my fancy. It was mighty black and thick, ye know it was cold after the rains, and when we was talkin', I asked her if she minded tellin' me the name of it and whar she'd bought it. And she laughed some, and said it was velvet, and she'd got it to some store in New York City. And I asked her if she'd write it down. I'd a little gal at home I wanted a dress off knit fur, and then, some ways, we warmed up, and I says to her, she ain't like me, if ye could see her ye'd never guess we was kin. She hadn't never seen ye. She come the night ye left, but when I told her more about ye, she says, I think I've hearn on her, I hearn she was very pretty. And I told her what I'd hed in my mind, and it seemed like it took her fancy, and she told me to get a paper and pencil and she'd tell me what to send fur and whar to send. And I sent fur 'em, and thar they air. She could not tell him that they were things not fit for her to wear. She looked at the rolls of silk, and the laces and feminine extras with a bewildered feeling. They are beautiful things, she said. I never thought of having such things for my own. Thar's no reason why ye shouldn't hev 'em, he said. I'd oughter hev thought of 'em afore. Do they suit ye, Louisiana? I should be very hard to please if they didn't, she answered. They are only too beautiful for a girl like me. They can't be that, he said gravely. I didn't see none no handsomer than you to the springs, Louisiana, and I says to the lady as writ it all down fur me, I says, what I want is fur her to hev what the best on 'em hev. I don't want nothin' no less than what she'd like to hev if she'd been raised in New York or Philadelphia City. Thar ain't no reason why she shouldn't hev it. Out of 11 she's all that's left, and she desarves it all. She's young and handsome, and she desarves it all. What did she say to that? Louisiana asked. He hesitated a moment before answering. She looked at me kinder queer for a minute, he replied at length. And then she says, she'd oughter be a very happy gal, says she, with such a father, and I says, I low she is, Meb. Only maybe, said the girl, only maybe, father. She dropped the roll of silk she had been holding and went to him. She put her hand on his arm again, and shook it a little, laughing in the same feverish fashion as when she had gone out to him on the porch on the day of her return. She had suddenly flushed up, and her eyes shone as he had seen them then. Only maybe, she said. Why should I be unhappy? There's no reason. Look at me with my fine house and my new things. There isn't anyone happier in the world. There is nothing left for me to wish for, I have got too much. A new mood seemed to have taken possession of her all at once. She scarcely gave him a chance to speak. She drew him to the trunk's side, and made him stand near while she took the things out one by one. She exclaimed and laughed over them as she drew them forth. She held the dress materials up to her waist and neck to see how the colors became her. She tried on laces and sacks and furbelows, and the hats which were said to have come from Paris. What will they say when they see me at meeting in them? She said. Brother Horner will forget his sermons. There never were such things in Bowersville before. I am almost afraid they will think I am putting on airs. When she reached a box of long kid gloves at the bottom, she burst into such a shrill laugh that her father was startled. There was a tone of false exhilaration about her, which was not what he had expected. See, she cried, holding one of the longest pairs up, 18 buttons, and cream color. I can wear them with the cream-colored silk and cashmere at a festival. When she had looked at everything, the rag carpet was strewn with her riches, with fashionable dress materials, with rich and delicate colors, with 100 feminine and pretty whims. How could I help but be happy, she said. I am like a queen. I don't suppose queens have very much more, though we don't know much about queens, do we? She hung round her father's neck, and kissed him in a fervent, excited way. You good old father, she said, you sweet old father. He took one of her soft, supple hands, and held it between both his brown and horny ones. Louisiana, he said, I low to make ye happy. Ef the Lord hain't nothin' agin it, I low to do it. He went out after that, and left her alone to set her things to rights, But when he had gone and closed the door, she did not touch them. She threw herself down flat upon the floor in the midst of them, her slender arms flung out, her eyes wide open and wild and dry. Chapter 13. A New Plan. At last the day came when the house was finished, and stood big and freshly painted and bare in the sun. Late one afternoon in the Indian summer, Casey and his men, having bestowed their last touches, collected their belongings and went away, leaving it a lasting monument to their ability. Inside, instead of the low ceilings and painted wooden walls, there were high rooms and plaster and modern papering. Outside, instead of the variegated piazza, was a substantial portico. The whole had been painted a warm gray, and Casey considered his job a neat one and was proud of it. When they were all gone, Louisiana went out into the front yard to look at it. She stood in the grass and leaned against an apple tree. It was near sunset, and both trees and grass were touched with a yellow glow so deep and mellow that it was almost a golden haze. Now that the long-continued hammering and sawing was at an end, and all traces of its accompaniments removed, the stillness seemed intense. There was not a breath of wind stirring, or the piping of a bird to be heard. The girl clasped her slender arms about the tree's trunk and rested her cheek against the rough bark. She looked up piteously. "I must try to get used to it," she said. "It is very much nicer, and I must try to get used to it." But the strangeness of it was very hard on her at first. When she looked at it, she had a startled feeling, as if when she had expected to see an old friend, she had found herself suddenly face to face with a stranger. Her father had gone to Bowersville early in the day, and she had been expecting his return for an hour or so. She left her place by the tree at length, and went to the fence to watch for his coming down the road. But she waited in vain so long that she got tired again, and wandered back to the house, and around to the back, to where a new barn and stable had been built, painted and ornamented in accordance with the most novel designs. There was no other such barn or stable in the country, and their fame was already widespread, and of an enviable nature. As she approached these buildings, Louisiana glanced up and uttered an exclamation. Her father was sitting upon the door-sill of the barn, and his horse was turned loose to graze upon the grass before him. "Fathers," the girl cried, "I have been waiting for you. I thought you had not come." "I've been a right smart while, Louisiany," he answered. "You wasn't round when I come, and so ye didn't see me, I reckon." He was pale and spoke at first heavily and as if with an effort, but almost instantly he brightened. "I've just been settin' you're steadyin'," he said. "A man wants to see it a few times and take it sorter gradual afore he kin do it justice. Lookin' at it from now," with a wide sweep of his hand toward the improvements, "ye kin see how much style thar is to it. Seems to me that the mountains now, they look better. It kinder sets 'em off, it kinder sets 'em off." "It is very much prettier," she answered. "Lord, yes, thar ain't no comparison. I was just settin' thinkin' that anyone seed it as it was afore they'd not know it. Eanthie, for instance, Eanthie she wouldn't scasely know it was home, thar's so much style to it." He suddenly stopped and rested against the door lintel. He was pale again, though he kept up a stout air of good cheer. "Lord," he said after a little pause, "it's a heap stylisher." Presently he bent down and picked up a twig which lay on the ground at his feet. He began to strip the leaves from it with careful slowness, and he kept his eyes fixed on it as he went on talking. "Ye'll never guess who I've been a-talkin' to today, and what I've been talkin' to him about." She put her hand on his knee caressingly. "Tell me, father," she said. He laughed a jerky, high-pitched laugh. "I've been talkin' to Jedge Powers," he said. "He's up yer from Howellsville, runnin' fer senator. He's sot his mind on mackin' it, too, and he was a-tellin' me what his principles was. He's got a heap o' principles. And he told me his wife and family was a-goin' to Europe. He was mighty sociable, and he said they was a-goin' to Europe." He had stripped the last leaf from the twig and had begun upon the bark. Just at this juncture, it slipped from his hand and fell on the ground. He bent down again to pick it up. "Louisiany," he said, "how would you like to go to Europe?" She started back amazed, but she could not catch even a glimpse of his face. He was so busy with the twig. "I go to Europe, she said. I never thought of it. It is not people like us who go to Europe, father." "Louisiany," he said hurriedly, "what's agin it? Thar ain't nothin'. It come in my mind when Powers was a-tellin' me. I says to myself, why, here's the very thing fer Louisiany, travel in furrin languages and new ways o' doin'. It's what she'd oughter he dee long ago. In Powers he went on a talkin' right while I was a steadyin', and he says, "War's that pretty darter o' yourn that we was so took with when we passed through Hamilton last summer? Why," says he says it hisself, Louisiana, "why don't ye send her to Europe? Let her go with my wife, she'll take care of her." And I stopped him right thar. "Do you mean it, Jedge?" I says. "Yes," says he. "Why not? My wife and daughter have talked about her many a time and said how they'd like to see her again. Send her," says he. "You're a rich man and ye can afford it, squire, if ye will." And I says, "So I kin ef she'd like to go, and what's more, I'm a-goin' to ask her ef she would, fur thar ain't nothin' agin it, nothin'." He paused for a moment, and turned to look at her. "That's what I was steadyin' about mostly, Louisiana," he said, "when I set yer afore ye come." She had been sitting beside him, and she sprang to her feet and stood before him. "Father," she cried, "are you tired of me?" "Tired of ye, Louisiana," he repeated, "tired of ye." She flung out her hand with a wild gesture, and burst into tears. "Are you tired of me?" she said again. "Don't you love me any more? Don't you want me as you used to? Could you do without me for months and months and know I was far away and couldn't come to you?" "No, you couldn't, I know that, though something, I don't know what has come between us, and I feel it every minute and most when you are kindest. Is there nothing in the way of my going away? Nothing? Think again." "Louisiana," he answered, "I can't think of nothin' that's partic'lar." She slipped down on her knee and threw herself on his breast, clinging to him with all her young strength. "Are you nothing?" she cried. "Is all your love nothing? Are all your beautiful, good thoughts for my happiness nothing? Is your loneliness nothing? Shall I leave you here to live by yourself in the new home which is strange to you, after you have given up the old one you knew and loved for me? Oh, what has made you think I have no heart, and no soul, and nothing to be grateful with? Have I ever been bad and cruel and hard to you that you can think it?" She poured forth her love and grief and tender reproach on his breast with such innocent fervor that he could scarcely bear it. His eyes were wet too, and his furrowed, sunburnt cheeks, and his breath came short and fast while he held her close in his arms. "Honey," he said, just as he had often spoken to her when she had been a little child. "Louisiana, honey, no, no, never, I never heed a thought agin ye, not in my bottermost heart. Did ye think it? Lord, no. Thar ain't nothin' ye have never done in your life that was meant to hurt or go agin me. Ye never did go agin me. Ye ain't like me, honey, ye are kinder finer. Ye was born so, I seed it when ye was in your cradle. I've said it to Ianthe, and since ye're growed up I've said it more. Thar's things ye'd oughter hev that's different from what most of us wants. It's through you bane so much finer. Ye mustn't be so tender-hearted, honey, ye mustn't." She clung more closely to him and cried afresh, though more softly. "Nothing shall take me away from you," she said, "ever again. I went away once, and it would have been better if I had stayed at home. The people did not want me. They meant to be good to me and they liked me, but they hurt me without knowing it, and it would have been better if I had stayed here. You don't make me feel ashamed and sad and bitter. You love me just as I am, and you would love me if I knew even less and was more simple. Let me stay with you. Let us stay together always, always, always." He let her cry her fill, holding her pretty head tenderly and soothing her as best he could. Somehow he looked a little brighter himself, and not quite so pale as he had done when she found him sitting alone trying to do the new house justice. When at length they went in to supper it was almost dusk, and he had his arms still around her. He did not let her go until they sat down at the table, and then she brought her chair quite close to his, and while he ate looked at him often with her soft, wet eyes. Chapter 14. Confessions. They had a long, quiet evening together afterward. They sat before the fire, and Louisiana drew her low seat near him so that she could rest her head upon his knee. "It's almost like old times," she said. "Let us pretend I never went away and that everything is as it used to be." "Would ye like it to be that away, Louisiana?" he asked. She was going to say yes, but she remembered the changes he had made to please her, and she turned her face and kissed the hand her cheek rested against. "You mustn't fancy I don't think the new house is beautiful," she said. "It isn't that I mean. What I would like to bring back is the feeling I used to have. That is all, nothing but the old feeling. And people can't always have the same feelings, can they? Things change so as we get older." He looked at the crackling fire very hard for a minute. "That's so," he said, "that's so. Things changes in general and feelin's now they're currus. Thar's things as kin be altered and things as can't, and feelin's they can't, they're currus. Ef ye heard 'em now, thar's money, it ain't no har, it don't do no good. Thar ain't nothin' ye kin buy as'll set 'em straight. F for instance, money could buy back them feelin's of yourn, them as ye'd like to have back, how ready and willin' I'd be to trade for, Lord, how ready and willin', but it won't do it. Thar's war it is. When they're gone a body has to larn to get along without 'em. And they sat silent again for some time, listening to the snapping of the dry wood burning in the great fireplace. When they spoke next it was of a different subject. "Effie ain't goin' to Europe," the old man began. "And I'm not, father," Louisiana put in. "Effie ain't, we must set to work fixin' up right away. This mornin' I was layin' out to myself to let it stay till ye come backin', then hev it all ready fur ye cheers and tables and sophias and mirrors and aisle paintin's. I laid out to do it slow, Louisiany, and take time, and steady a heap, and to take advice from them ease knows, afore I traded Ari time. I lowed it'd be a heap better to take advice from them ease knowed. Brown ease owns the springs, I lowed to hev asked him now. He's used to furnishin' up and knows where to trade and what to trade fur. The paintin's, now I've hearn it takes a heap o' experience to pick 'em, and I ain't he'd no experience. I low I shouldn't know a good un when I seen it now them picters as was in the parlor, ye know more than I do I just say, now them picters," he said, a little uncertainly, "was they to say good, or only about middlin'?" She hesitated a second. "Mother was fond of them," she broke out, in a burst of simple feeling. Remembering how she had stood before the simpering, red-cheeked faces and hated them, how she had burned with shame before them, she was stricken with a bitter pang of remorse. "Mother was fond of them," she said. "That's so," he answered simply. "That's so, she was, and you bane so soft-hearted and tender makes it sorter go agin ye to give in as they wasn't what she took 'em fur. But ye see, that, though it's natural don't make 'em good or bad, Louisiany, and Lord, it don't harm her. 'Tain't what folks knows or what they don't know that makes the good in 'em. E'en't she warn't to say complished, but I don't see how she could have been no better than she was, nor more calculated to wear well in the peant o' religion. Not heaven experience in aisle paintin's ain't what hurt her, nor make us think no less of her. It wouldn't have hurt her when she was livin', and Lord, she's past it now, she's past it, e'en't is." He talked a good deal about his plans, and of the things he meant to buy. He was quite eager in his questioning of her, and showed such lavishness as went to her heart. "I want to leave you well fixed," he said. "Leave me," she echoed. He made a hurried effort to soften the words. "I'd oughtn't to said it," he said. "It was kinder keerless. That thar, it's a long way off, Meb, and I'd oughtn't to hev said it. It's a way old folks hev, but it's a bad way. Things get to seem sorter near to 'em and ordinary." The whole day had been to Louisiana a slow approach to a climax. Sometimes when her father talked, she could scarcely bear to look at his face as the firelight shone on it. So, when she had bidden him good night at last, and walked to the door leaving him standing upon the hearth watching her as she moved away, she turned round suddenly and faced him again, with her hand upon the latch. "Father," she cried, I want to tell you. "What?" he said. "What, Louisiany?" She put her hand to her side and leaned against the door, a slender, piteous figure. "Don't look at me kindly," she said. "I don't deserve it, I deserve nothing, I have been ashamed." He stopped her, putting up his shaking hand and turning pale. "Don't say nothin' as ye'll be sorry fur when ye feel better, Louisiany," he said. "Don't get carried away by your feelin's into sayin' nothin' ease is hard on yourself. Don't ye do it, Louisiany. Thar ain't no need fur it, honey. You're kinder wrought up now, and ye can't do yourself justice." But she would not be restrained. "I must tell you," she said. "It has been on my heart too long. I ought never to have gone away. Everybody was different from us and had new ways. I think they laughed at me, and it made me bad. I began to ponder over things until at last I hated myself and everything, and was ashamed that I had been content. When I told you I wanted to play a joke on the people who came here, it was not true. I wanted them to go away without knowing that this was my home. It was only a queer place, to be laughed at to them, and I was ashamed of it, and bitter and angry. When they went into the parlor they laughed at it, and at the pictures, and everything in it, and I stood by with my cheeks burning. When I saw a strange woman in the kitchen, it flashed into my mind that I had no need to tell them that all these things that they laughed at had been round me all my life. They were not sneering at them. It was worse than that. They were only interested and amused and curious, and were not afraid to let me see. The gentleman had been led by his sister to think I came from some city. He thought I was pretty and educated, his equal, and I knew how amazed he would be and how he would say he could not believe that I had lived here, and wonder at me and talk me over. And I could not bear it. I only wanted him to go away without knowing and never, never see me again. Remembering the pain and fever and humiliation of the past, and of that dreadful day above all, she burst into sobbing. You did not think I was that bad, did you? She said. But I was. Louisiana, he said huskily, come yer. Thar ain't no need fur ye to blame yourself that away, you're kinder wrought up. Don't be kind to me, she said. Don't, I want to tell you all every word. I was so bad and proud and angry that I meant to carry it out to the end, and tried to, only I was not quite bad enough for one thing, father. I was not bad enough to be ashamed of you, or to bear to sit by and see them cast a slight upon you. They didn't mean it for a slight, it was only their clever way of looking at things, but I loved you. You were all I had left, and I knew you were better than they were 1,000 times. Did they think I would give your warm, good heart, your kind, faithful heart, for all they had learned or for all they could ever learn? It killed me to see and hear them, and it seemed as if I was on fire. And I told them the truth, that you were my father and that I loved you and was proud of you, that I might be ashamed of myself and all the rest, but not of you, never of you, for I wasn't worthy to kiss your feet. For one moment her father watched her, his lips parted and trembling. It seemed as if he meant to try to speak, but could not. Then his eyes fell with an humble, bewildered, questioning glance upon his feet, encased in their large, substantial brogans. The feet she had said she was not worthy to kiss. What he saw in them to touch him so it would be hard to tell, for he broke down utterly, put out his hand, groping to feel for his chair, fell into it with head bowed on his arm, and burst into sobbing too. She left her self-imposed exile in an instant, ran to him, and knelt down to lean against him. Oh, she cried, have I broken your heart? Have I broken your heart? Will God ever forgive me? I don't ask you to forgive me, Father, for I don't deserve it. At first he could not speak, but he put his arm round her and drew her head up to his breast, and with all the love and tenderness he had lavished upon her all her life, she had never known such love and tenderness as he expressed in this one movement. Louisiana, he said brokenly when he had found his voice, it's you as should be forgiven me. She exclaimed. He held her in his trembling arm, so close, that she felt his heart quivering. To think, he almost whispered, as I should not have been doing ye justice. To think as I didn't know ye well enough to do ye justice. To think your own father, that's knowed ye all your life, could have give in to its bane likely as ye wasn't, what he'd allers thought, and what your mother thought, and what ye was, honey. I don't, she began falteringly. It's me as oughter be standin' agin the door, he said. It's me. I knowed every word of the first part of what ye have told me, Louisiana. I've been so sot on ye that I've got into a kinder noticin' way with ye, and I guessed it out. I seen it in your face when ye stood thar tryin' to laugh on the porch while them people was a-waitin'. 'Twa'n't no natural gal's laugh ye laughed, and when ye thought I wasn't noticin', I was noticin' and thinkin' all the time. But I seen more than was thar, honey, and I didn't do ye justice, and I've been punished fur it. It come agin me like a slungshot. I says to myself, she's ashamed o' me, it's me she's ashamed of, and she wants to pass me off fur a stranger. The girl drew off from him a little, and looked up into his face wonderingly. You thought that, she said, and never told me and humored me and… I'd oughter knowed ye better, he said. But I've suffered fur it, Louisiana. I says to myself, all the years that we've been sot on each other and nussed each other through our little sick spells and keered fur each other lies gone fur nothin'. She wants to pass me off fur a stranger. Not that I blamed ye, honey. Lord, I knowed the difference betwixt us. I'd knowed it long afore you did. But somehow it warn't exactly what I looked fur and it was kinder hard on me right at the start. And then the folks went away and ye didn't go with 'em. And thar was somethin' workin' on ye as I knowed ye wasn't ready to tell me about. And I sot and steadied it over and watched ye, and I prayed some, and I laid wake nights steadyin', and I made up my mind that I'd been the cause o' trouble to ye. I'd oughter try and sorter balance the thing. I allers load parents he'd a duty to their children. And I says, thar's some things that kin be altered and some that can't. Let's alter them kin. She remembered the words well, and now she saw clearly the dreadful pain they had expressed. They cut her to her soul. Oh, father, she cried, how could you? I'd oughter knowed ye better, Louisiana, he repeated. But I didn't, I says. What money and steadyin' and watchin'll do fur her to make up shall be done. I'll try to make up fur the wrong I've did her onwillin'ly. And I went to the springs and I watched and steaded thar, and I come home and I watched and steaded thar, and I hed the house fixed, and I laid out to let ye go to Europe. Though what I'd hearn o' the habits o' the people, And the brigands and sich, went powerful again me mackin', up my mind easy. And I never lost sight nary minute what I'd laid out fur to do. But I wasn't doin' ye justice, and didn't suffer no more than I'd oughter. And when ye stood up thar agin the door, honey, with your tears streamin' and your eyes shinin', and told me what ye'd felt and what ye'd said about delicately, about thet thar as ye thought ye wasn't worthy to do, it set my blood tremblin' in my veins, and my heart shackin' in my side, and me a-goin' all over. And I was struck all of a heap, and knowed thet the Lord he'd been better to me than I thought. And even when I was fondest on ye, and proudest on ye, I hadn't done ye no sort o' justice in the world, and never could. There was no danger of their misunderstanding each other again. When they were calmer, they talked their trouble over simply and confidingly, holding nothing back. When ye told me, Louisiana, said her father, that ye wanted nothin' but me, it kinder went agin me more than all the rest, fur I thinks, says I to myself, it ain't true, and she must be gettin' sorter hardened to it, or she'd never said it. I seemed like it was kinder unnecessary. Lord, the onjustice I was doin' ye. They bade each other good night again, at last. Fur ye're lookin' pale, he said. And I've been kinder out sorts myself these last 2 or 3 weeks. My dyspepsy's been back on me again, and thet thar pain in my sides been workin' on me. We must take keer o' ourselves, bane ease thar's ony us too, and we're so sot on each other. He went to the door with her, and said his last words to her there. I'm glad it come tonight, he said, in a grateful tone. Lord, how glad I am it come tonight. Bossin, somethin' he happened to one of us, and the other he been left not knowin' how it was. I'm glad it didn't last no longer, Louisiana. And so they parted for the night. Chapter 15. Nancy. It was later than usual when Louisiana awakened in the morning. She awakened suddenly, and found herself listening to the singing of a bird on the tree near her window. Its singing was so loud and shrill that it overpowered her, and aroused her to a consciousness of fatigue and exhaustion. It seemed to her at first that no one was stirring in the house below, but after a few minutes, she heard someone talking in her father's room, talking rapidly in monotonous tone. I wonder who it is, she said, and lay back upon her pillow, feeling tired out and bewildered between the bird's shrill song and the strange voice. And then she heard heavy feet on the stairs, and listened to them nervously, until they reached her door, and the door was pushed open unceremoniously. The Negro woman, Nancy, thrust her head into the room. Miss Louisiana, honey, she said, ye ain't up yet. No. Ye'd better get up, honey, and come downstairs. But the girl made no movement. Why, she asked listlessly. Your pappy, honey, he's sorter cur'ous. He don't seem to be right well. He didn't seem to be quite at hisself when I went to light his fire. Louisiana sat upright in bed, her great coil of black hair tumbling over one shoulder and making her look even paler than she was. Father, she said, he was quite well late last night. It was after midnight when we went to bed, and he was well then. The woman began to fumble uneasily at the latch. Don't ye get scared, Chilly, she said. Meb tain't nothin', but seemed to me like he didn't know me. Louisiana was out of bed, standing upon the floor and dressing hurriedly. He was well last night, she said piteously. Only a few hours ago, he was well and talked to me and... She stopped suddenly to listen to the voice downstairs, a new and terrible thought flashing upon her. Who is with him, she asked, who is talking to him? Thar ain't no one with him, was the answer. He's by hisself, honey. Louisiana was buttoning her wrapper at the throat. Such a tremor fell upon her that she could not finish what she was doing. She left the button unfastened and pushed past Nancy and ran swiftly down the stairs, the woman following her. The door of her father's room stood open, and the fire Nancy had lighted burned and crackled merrily. Mr. Rogers was lying high upon his pillow, watching the blaze. His face was flushed, and he had one hand upon his chest. He turned his eyes slowly upon Louisiana as she entered, and for a second or so regarded her wonderingly. Then a change came upon him, his face lighted up. It seemed as if he saw all at once who had come to him. Ianthe, he said, I didn't scasely know ye have been gone so long, where have ye been? But even then, she could not realize the truth. It was so short a time since he had bidden her good night, and kissed her at the door. Father, she cried, it is Louisiana, father, look at me. But he was looking at her, and yet he only smiled again. It's been such a long time, Ianthe, he said. Sometimes I've thought you wouldn't never come back at all." And when she fell upon her knees at the bedside, with a desolate cry of terror and anguish, he did not seem to hear it at all, but lay fondling her bent head and smiling still, and saying happily, "Lord, I am glad to see ye." When the doctor came, he was a mountaineer like the rest of them, a rough, good-natured fellow who had read a course with somebody and tended lectures in Cincinnati. He could tell her easily enough what the trouble was. "Pneumonie," he said, "and pretty bad at that. He hain't no health fur a right smart while. He hain't never got over thet spell he last winter. This yer change in the weather's what's done it. He was complainin' to me the other day about thet thar old pain in his kist. Things he's been kinder cumulatin' on him." "He does not know me," said Louisiana. "He is very ill, he is very ill." Dr. Hankins looked at his patient for a moment, dubiously. "Well, thet's so," he said at length. "He's pretty bad off, pretty bad." By night the house was full of visitors and volunteer nurses. The fact that Uncle Elbert Rogers was down with pneumonie, and Louisiana Thar without a soul anig her, was enough to rouse sympathy and curiosity. Aunt Mandy, Aunt Callan and Aunt Nervy came up one after the other. "Louisiana now, she ain't nothin' but a young thing and don't know nothin'," they said. "And Elbert Bain sich nigh kin, it'd look powerful bad if we didn't go." They came in wagons or rickety buggies, and brought their favorite medicines and liniments with them in slab-sided enamel cloth valises. They took the patient under their charge, applied their nostrums, and when they were not busy, seemed to enjoy talking his symptoms over in low tones. They were very good to Louisiana, relieving her of every responsibility in spite of herself, and shaking their heads at each other pityingly when her back was turned. "She never give him no trouble," they said. "She's got thet to hold to, and they was powerful sot on her, both him and Ianthe. I've hearn 'em say she alus was kinder tender and easy to manage." Their husbands came to sit up with them at night, and sat by the fire talking about their crops and the elections, and expectorating with regularity into the ashes. They tried to persuade Louisiana to go to bed, but she would not go. "Let me sit by him, if there is nothing else I can do," she said. "If he should come to himself for a minute he would know me if I was near him." In his delirium he seemed to have gone back to a time before her existence, the time when he was a young man, and there was no one in the new house he had built, but himself and Ianthe. Sometimes he fancied himself sitting by the fire on a winter's night, and congratulating himself upon being there. "Just to think," he would say in a quiet, speculative voice, "that 2 year ago I didn't know ye, and thar ye air, sittin' suin', and the fire cracklin', and the house all fixed. This year's what I call solid comfort, Ianthe, just solid comfort." Once he wakened suddenly from a sleep, and finding Louisiana bending over him, drew her face down and kissed her. "I didn't know you was so nigh, Ianthe," he whispered. "Lord, just to think you're allers nigh and thar can't nothin' separate us." The desolateness of so living a life outside his was so terrible to the poor child who loved him, that at times she could not bear to remain in the room, but would go out into the yard and ramble about aimless and heartbroken, looking back now and then at the new, strange house with a wild pang. "There will be nothing left if he leaves me," she said. "There will be nothing." And then she would hurry back, panting, and sit by him again, her eyes fastened upon his unconscious face, watching its every shade of expression and change. "She'll take it mighty hard," she heard Aunt Callan whisper one day, and she put her hands to her ears and buried her face in the pillow, that she might not hear the rest. Chapter 16. Don't do no one a injustice. He was not ill very long. Toward the end of the second week, the house was always full of visitors who came to sympathize and inquire and prescribe, and who, in many cases, came from their farms miles away attracted by the news that Uncle Elbert Rogers was mighty bad off. They came on horseback and in wagons or buggies, men in homespun and women in sunbonnets, and they hitched their horses at the fence and came into the house with an awkwardly subdued air, and stood in silence by the sick bed for a few minutes, and then rambled towards the hearth and talked in spectral whispers. "The old man's purty low," they always said. "He's purty low." And then they added among themselves that he had allers been mighty clever and a good neighbor. When she heard them speak of him in this manner, Louisiana knew what it meant. She never left the room again after the first day that they spoke so, and came in bodies to look at him, and turn away and say that he had been good to them. The men never spoke to her after their first nod of greeting, and the women but rarely, but they often glanced hurriedly askance at her as she sat or stood by the sick man's pillow. Somehow none of them had felt as if they were on very familiar terms with her, though they all spoke in a friendly way of her as being a mighty purty, still, a harmless young critter. They thought, when they saw her pallor and the anguish in her eyes, that she was talkin' it powerful hard, and no wonder. But they knew nothing of her desperate loneliness and terror. "Uncle Elbert he'll leave a plenty," they said in undertones. "She'll be well pervaded fur, will Louisiana." And they watched over their charge and nursed him faithfully, feeling not a little sad themselves, as they remembered his simple good nature and neighborliness, and the kindly prayers for which he had been noted in Meaton. On the last day of the second week, the doctor held a consultation with Aunt Nervy and Aunt Caline on the front porch before he went away, and when they re-entered the room they spoke in whispers even lower than before and moved about stealthily. The doctor himself rode away slowly and stopped at a house or so on the wayside, where he had no patience, to tell the inhabitants what he had told the head nurses. "We couldn't have expected him to stay allers," he said, "but we'll miss him mightily. He hain't a enemy in the county, nary one." That afternoon when the sun was setting, the sick man wakened from a long, deep sleep. The first thing he saw was the bright pale yellow of a tree out in the yard, which had changed color since he had seen it last. It was a golden tree now as it stood in the sun, its leaves rustling in a faint, chill wind. The next thing, he knew that there were people in the room who sat silent, and all looked at him with kindly, even reverent eyes. Then he turned a little and saw his child, who bent towards him with dilated eyes and trembling, parted lips. A strange, vague memory of weary pain and dragging, uncertain days and nights came to him, and he knew, and yet felt no fear. "Louisiana," he said. He could only speak in a whisper and tremulously. Those who sat about him hushed their very breath. "Lay your head on the pillar nigh me," he said. She laid it down and put her hand in his. The great tears were streaming down her face, but she said not a word. "I hain't got long, honey," he faltered. "The Lord he'll cure fur ye." Then for a few minutes, he lay breathing faintly, but with his eyes open and smiling as they rested on the golden foliage of the tree. "How yaller it is," he whispered, "like gold, Ianthe was powerful sot on it, it kinder beckons." It seemed as if he could not move his eyes from it, and the pause that followed was so long that Louisiana could bear it no longer, and she lifted her head and kissed him. "Father," she cried, "say something to me, say something to me." It drew him back, and he looked up into her eyes as she bent over him. "Ye'll be happy," he said, "afore long I kinder know, Lord, how I've loved ye, honey, and ye have desarved it all. Don't ye do no one a onjustice." And then as she dropped her white face upon the pillow again, he saw her no longer, nor the people, nor the room, but lay quite still with parted lips and eyes wide open, smiling still at the golden tree waving and beckoning in the wind. This he saw last of all, and seemed still to see even when someone came silently, though with tears, and laid a hand upon his eyes. Chapter 17. A Leaf. There was a sunny old graveyard half a mile from the town, where the people of Bowersville laid their dead under the long grass and tangle of wild creeping vines, and the whole countryside gathered there when they lowered the old man into his place at his wife's side. His neighbors sang his funeral hymn and performed the last offices for him with kindly hands, and when they turned away and left him, there was not a man or woman of them who did not feel that they had lost a friend. They were very good to Louisiana. Aunt Nervy and Aunt Caline deserted their families that they might stay with her until all was over, doing their best to give her comfort. It was Aunt Nervy who first thought of sending for the girl cousin to whom the trunkful of clothes had been given. "Let's send for Leander's Jenny, Caline," she said. "Meb it'd help her some to hev a gal nigh her. Gals kinder understands each other, and Jenny was a Lou's powerful fond o' Louisiana." So Jenny was sent for and came. From her lowly position, as one of the 15 in an unfortunate family, she had adored and looked up to Louisiana all her life. All the brightest days in her experience had been spent at Uncle Elbert's with her favorite cousin. But there was no brightness about the house now. When she arrived and was sent upstairs to the pretty new room Louisiana occupied, she found the girl lying upon the bed. She looked white and slender in her black dress. Her hands were folded palm to palm under her cheek, and her eyes were wide open. Jenny ran to her and knelt at her side. She kissed her and began to cry. "Oh," she sobbed, "somehow I didn't ever think I should come here and not find Uncle Elbert. It don't seem right, it makes it like a strange place." Then Louisiana broke into sobs, too. "It is a strange place," she cried, "a strange place, a strange place. Oh, if one old room was left, just one that I could go into and not feel so lonely." But she had no sooner said it than she checked herself. "Oh, I oughtn't to say that," she cried. "I won't say it. He did it all for me and I didn't deserve it." "Yes, you did," said Jenny, fondling her. "He was always saying what a good child you had been, and that you had never given him any trouble." "That was because he was so good," said Louisiana. "No one else in the whole world was so good. And now he is gone, and I can never make him know how grateful I was and how I loved him." "He did know," said Jenny. "No," returned Louisiana. "It would have taken a long, long life to make him know all I felt, and now when I look back it seems as if we had been together such a little while. Oh, I thought the last night we talked that there was a long life before us, that I should be old before he left me, and we should have had all those years together." After the return from the graveyard, there was a prolonged discussion held among the heads of the different branches of the family. They gathered at one end of the back porch and talked of Louisiana, who sat before the log fire in her room upstairs. "She ain't in the notion o' leavin' the place," said Aunt Nervy. "She cried powerful when I mentioned it to her, and wouldn't hear to it. She says over and over agin, 'Let me stay in the home he made for me, Aunt Caline.' I reckon she's a kind o' notion Elbert lo'd fur her to be yer when he was gone." "Wile now," said Uncle Leander, "I reckon he did. He talked a heap on it when he was in a talkin' way. He said to me, I want things to be jest as she'd enjoy 'em most, when she's sorter lonesome, ease she will be, Meb. Seemed like he dee it in his mind ease he warn't long fur this world. Don't let us cross her in nothin'. He never did. He was powerful tender on her, was Elbert." "I seed Marthy Lurany Nance this mornin'," put in Aunt Caline, "and I told her to come up and kinder overlook things. She hain't with no one now, and I just say she'd like to stay and keep house." "I don't see nothin' agin it," commented Uncle Steve, "if Louisiany don't. She's a settled woman and's been married, and hain't no family to pester her since Nance is dead." "She was allers the throughgoin' kind," said Aunt Nervy. "Things'll be well looked to, and she thought a heap o' Elbert. They was raised together." "Esposny was to go in and speak to Louisiany," suggested Uncle Steve. Louisiana, being spoken to, was very tractable. She was willing to do anything asked of her but go away. "I should be very glad to have Mrs. Nance here, Aunt Minerva," she said. "She was always very kind, and Father liked her. It won't be like having a strange face near me. Please tell her I want her to come, and that I hope she will try to feel as if she was at home." So Marthy Lurany Nance came, and was formally installed in her position. She was a tall, strongly built woman, with blue eyes, black hair, and thick black eyebrows. She wore, when she arrived, her best alpaca gown and a starched and frilled blue sunbonnet. When she presented herself to Louisiana, she sat down before her, removed this sunbonnet with a scientific flap, and hung it on the back of her chair. "You look mighty peaked, Louisiany," she said. "Mighty peaked." "I don't feel very well," Louisiana answered, "but I suppose I shall be better after a while." "Ye're talkin' it powerful hard, Louisiany," said Mrs. Nance. "And I don't blame ye. I ain't gwine to pester ye a talkin'. I just come to say I load to do my plumb best by ye, and ax ye whether ye liked hop yeast or salt ricin." At the end of the week, Louisiana and Mrs. Nance were left to themselves. Aunt Nervy and Aunt Caline and the rest had returned to their respective homes. Even Jenny had gone back to Bowersville, where she boarded with a relation and went to school. The days after this seemed so long to Louisiana that she often wondered how she lived through them. In the first passion of her sorrow, she had not known how they passed, but now that all was silence and order in the house, and she was alone, she had nothing to do but to count the hours. There was no work for her, no one came in and out for whom she might invent some little labor of love. There was no one to watch for, no one to think of. She used to sit for hours at her window watching the leaves change their color day by day, and at last flutter down upon the grass at the least stir of wind. Once she went out and picked up one of these leaves, and taking it back to her room, shut it up in a book. "Everything has happened to me since the day it was first a leaf," she said. "I have lived just as long as a leaf, that isn't long." When the trees were bare, she one day remembered the books she had sent for when at the Springs, and she went to the place where she had put them, brought them out, and tried to feel interested in them again. "I might learn a great deal," she said, "if I persevered. I have so much time." But she had not read many pages before the tears began to roll down her cheeks. If he had lived, she said, I might have read them to him and it would have pleased him so. I might have done it often if I had thought less about myself. He would have learned too. He thought he was slow, but he would have learned too in a little while, and he would have been so proud. She was very like her father in the simple tenderness of her nature. She grieved with the hopeless passion of a child for the unconscious wrong she had done. It was as she sat trying to fix her mind upon these books that there came to her the first thought of a plan, which was afterwards of some vague comfort to her. She had all the things which had furnished the old parlor taken into one of the unused rooms, the chairs and tables, the carpet, the ornaments and pictures. She spent a day in placing everything as she remembered it, doing all without letting anyone assist her. After it was arranged, she left the room, and locked the door, taking the key with her. No one shall go in but myself, she said. It belongs to me more than all the rest. I never knowed her to do nothin' notionate but that, remarked Mrs. Nance in speaking of it afterwards. She's mighty still and sits and grieves a heap, but she ain't never notionate. That was kinder notionate fur a gal to do. She set store on 'em 'cause they was her pappies and her ma's, I reckon. It can't be nothin' else, fur they ain't to say stylish, though they was allers good solid appearin' things. The picters was the on'y things ease was showy. She's mighty pale and slender since her pappy died, said the listener. While yes, she's kinder peaked, admitted Mrs. Nance. She's kinder peaked, but she'll get over it. Young folks allers does. But she did not get over it as soon as Mrs. Nance had expected, in view of her youth. The days seemed longer and lonelier to her as the winter advanced, though they were really so much shorter, and she had at last been able to read and think of what she read. When the snow was on the ground, and she could not wander about the place, she grew paler still. Louisiana, said Mrs. Nance, coming in upon her one day as she stood at the window, ye're a beginnin' to look like ye're Aunt Melissy. Am I? Answered Louisiana. She died when she was young, didn't she? She wasn't but 19, grimly. She hed a kind o' love scrape, and when the feller married Emmeline Ruggles she just give right in. They hed a quarrel, and he was a sparity kind o' thing and married Emmeline when he was mad. He cut off his nose to spite his face, and a nice time he hed of it when it was done. Melissy was a pretty gal but kinder consumptiony, and she hadn't backbone enough to hold her up. She died 8 or 9 months after they'd quarreled. Meb she'd have died anyhow, but that sorter hastened it up. When folks is consumptiony, it don't take much to set 'em off. I don't think I am consumptiony, said Louisiana. Lord a massy, no, briskly, and ye'd best not begin to think it. I wasn't a meanin' thet. Ye have kinder got into a poor way steadyin' 'bout your pappy, and it's tellin' on ye. Ye look as if thar wasn't a thing of ye, and ye don't take no intruss. Ye'd oughter stir round more. I'm going to stir round, a little as soon as Jake brings the buggy up, said Louisiana. I'm going out. War. Toward town. For a moment, Mrs. Nance looked at her charge steadily, but at length her feelings were too much for her. She had been thinking this matter over for some time. Louisiana, she said, you're a-gwine to the graveyard, thet's war ye're a-gwine and thar ain't no sense in it. Young folks hadn't ought to hold on to trouble that away, tain't natural. They don't gin'rally. Elbert be aggin it himself ef he knowed, and I s'pose he does. Like as not him and Ianthe's a worryin' about it now, and Lord knows ef they air it'll spile all their enjoyment. Kingdom come won't be nothin' to 'em if they're wanna see in their minds 'bout ye. Now an aggin it's paired to me that meb harps and crowns in the company o' postals don't set a body up all in a minute, and make 'em forgit their flesh and blood and natural feelin's teetotally. And it kinder troubles me to think o' Elbert and Ianthe worryin', and not havin' no pleasure. Seems to me ef I was you I'd think it over and try to cheer up and take in truss. Just think how keerful your pappy and ma was on ye and how sot they was on heaven ye well and happy. Louisiana turned toward her. Her eyes were full of tears. Oh, she whispered, do you think they know? Mrs. Nance was scandalized. No, she echoed. While now, Louisiana, ef I didn't know your raisin, and thet ye'd been brought up with members all your life, it'd go aggin me powerful to hear ye talk that away. Ye know they know, and thet they'll take it hard, ef they ain't changed mightily, but changed or not, I guess thar's mighty few sperits ease hain't sense enough to see your grievin' more and longer than's good fur ye. Louisiana turned to her window again. She rested her forehead against the framework and looked out for a little while. But at last she spoke. Perhaps you are right, she said. It is true it would have hurt them when they were here. I think I'll try to be happier. It's what'll please 'em best, if ye do, Louisiana, commented Mrs. Nance. I'll try, Louisiana answered. I will go out now. The cold air will do me good, and when I come back you will see that I am better. While, advised Mrs. Nance, "Effie go, mind you put on a plenty, and don't stay long." The excellent woman stood on the porch when the buggy was brought up, and having tucked the girl's wraps round her, watched her driven away. "Meb me a speakins I diddle help her," she said. "Seems like it kinder tecked her and sot her thinkin'. She was dretful fond of her pappy and she was allers a purty peaceable advise-talkin' little thing, though she ain't so little nuther. She's real tall and slim." Chapter 18. He knew that I loved you. It was almost dark when the buggy returned. As Jake drove up to the gate, he bent forward to look at something. "Thar's a critter hitched to the fence," he remarked. "'Tain't no critter from round yer, I never seen it afore." Mrs. Nance came out upon the porch to meet them. She was gently excited by an announcement she had to make. "Louisiana," she said, "thar's a man in the settin' room, he's a-waitin' to see ye. I asked him ef he'd anything to sell, and he said no he hadn't nothin'. He's purty genteel and stylish but not to say showy, and he's polite sort o' manners." "Has he been waiting long?" Louisiana asked. "He's been thar half a hour, and I've hed the fire made up since he come." Louisiana removed her hat and cloak and gave them to Mrs. Nance. She did it rather slowly, and having done it, crossed the hall to the sitting-room door, opened it and went in. There was no light in the room, but the light of the wood fire, but that was very bright. It was so bright that she had not taken 2 steps into the room before she saw clearly the face of the man who waited for her. It was Lawrence Farrell. She stopped short and her hands fell at her sides. Her heart beat so fast that she could not speak. His heart beat fast, too, and it beat faster still when he noted her black dress and saw how pale and slight she looked in it. He advanced towards her and taking her hand in both his, led her to a chair. "I have startled you too much," he said. "Don't make me feel that I was wrong to come, don't be angry with me." She let him seat her in the chair, and then he stood before her and waited for her to speak. "It was rather sudden," she said, "but I am not angry." There was a silence of a few seconds, because he was so moved by the new look her face wore that he could not easily command his voice and words. "Have you been ill?" he asked gently at last. He saw that she made an effort to control herself and answer him quietly, but before she spoke, she gave up even the effort. She did not try to conceal or wipe away the great tears that fell down her cheeks as she looked up at him. "No, I have not been ill," she said. "My father is dead." And as she uttered the last words, her voice sank almost into a whisper. Just for a breath's space they looked at each other, and then she turned in her chair, laid her arm on the top of it and her face on her arm, with a simple helpless movement. "He has been dead 3 months, she whispered, weeping. His own eyes were dim as he watched her. He had not heard of this before. He walked to the other end of the room and back again twice. When he neared her the last time he stopped. "Must I go away?" he asked unsteadily. "I feel as if I had no right here." But she did not tell him whether he must go or stay. "If I stay I must tell you why I came, and why I could not remain away," he said. She still drooped against her chair and did not speak, and he drew still nearer to her. "It does not seem the right time," he said, "but I must tell you even if I go away at once afterwards. I have never been happy an hour since we parted that wretched day. I have never ceased to think of what I had begun to hope for. I felt that it was useless to ask for it then, I feel as if it was useless now, but I must ask for it. Oh, desperately, how miserably I am saying it all, how weak it sounds." In an instant, he was kneeling on one knee at her side, and had caught her hand and held it between both his own. "I'll say the simplest thing," he said. "I love you. Everything is against me, but I love you and I am sure I shall never love another woman." He clasped her hand close, and she did not draw it away. "Won't you say a word to me?" he asked. "If you only tell me that this is the wrong time and that I must go away now, it will be better than some things you might say." She raised her face and let him see it. "No," she said, "it is not that it is the wrong time. It is a better time than any other, because I am so lonely and my trouble has made my heart softer than it was when I blamed you so. It is not that it is the wrong time, but—" "Wait a minute," he broke in. Don't do me an injustice." He could not have said anything else so likely to reach her heart. She remembered the last faltering words she had heard as she bent over the pillow when the sun was shining on the golden tree, with the wind waving its branches. "Don't do no one a onjustice, honey, don't ye do no one a onjustice." "Oh," she cried out, He told me that I must not, he told me before he died. What, said Farrell, he told you not to be unjust to me. It was you he meant, she answered. He knew I had been hard to you, and he knew I. She cowered down a little, and Farrell folded her in his arms. Don't be hard to me again, he whispered. I have been so unhappy, I love you so tenderly. Did he know that you speak to me, Louise? She put her hand upon his shoulder. He knew that I loved you, she said with a little sob. She was a great favorite among her husband's friends in New York the next year. One of her chief attractions for them was that she was a new type. They said that of her invariably when they delighted in her, and told each other how gentle she was, and how simple and sweet. The artists made studies of her, and adored her, and were enthusiastic over her beauty. While among the literary ones it was said, again and again, what a foundation she would be for a heroine of the order of those who love and suffer for love's sake, and grow more adorable through their pain. But these, of course, were only the delightful imaginings of art, talked over among themselves, and Louisiana did not hear of them. She was very happy and very busy. There was a gay joke current among them that she was a most tremendous bookworm, and that her literary knowledge was something for weak, ordinary mortals to quail before. The story went that by some magic process she committed to memory the most appalling works half an hour after they were issued from the press, and that secretly, Lawrence stood very much in awe of her and was constantly afraid of exposing his ignorance in her presence. It was certainly true that she read a great deal, and showed a wonderful aptness and memory, and that Lawrence's pride and delight in her were the strongest and tenderest feelings of his heart. Almost every summer they spent in North Carolina, filling their house with those of their friends who would most enjoy the simple quiet of the life they led. There were numberless pictures painted among them at such times, and numberless new types discovered. But you'd scarcely think, it was said sometimes, that it is here that Mrs. Lawrence is on her native heath. And though all the rest of the house was open, there was one room into which no one but Lawrence and Louisiana ever went. A little room, with strange, ugly furniture in it, and bright-colored lithographs upon the walls. And